Happy Friday, everybody. Happy cocktail night. Happy trivia night. Here we go. Let's get all set. How are you? I was running around, shaking up my little cocktail. Let me see who is here. Oh, there we go. Oh, that scared me. I had a different screen going. I'm going to try to do split screen tonight. Happy Friday, everybody. It's great to see you. You made it to the weekend. We are ready for our good. We are ready for our good times. If we can open our good times. I have a miniature Mai Tai this weekend. Kara, was it you? Cheers, my dears. Was it you last week who had the Mai Tai that made me so jealous that I had to deviate from my wine and instead get the little Mai Tai thing out? They only had the little teeny ones at the booze store. But happy Friday. Bottoms up. Cheers, my dears. It really put me in the mood for a Mai Tai all week. Kira, happy Friday. It is so nice when it's finally cocktail time because we know we've hit the weekend. Robin, cheers from Wisconsin, your little glass of red wine. I love your idea for the prim horse that you're going to do. I think that's a really good choice. Mom, yay, cocktail time and trivia night. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Good to see you, Mom. I miss you. I just saw you a few days ago, but whenever I do these little game nights, I feel like I wish we were together because it's just much more fun when we're together. We're fooling around with our games. And Martha, happy Friday. Cheers in Ontario. I feel like I could be centered, but there we go. There we go. OCD kicking in. Linda H, happy Friday. Chrissy, cheers, my dears. Again, I want to remind you, the linen should be here tomorrow because I have two things to send out to you. So I have not forgotten. I never forget about you. I'm just waiting for supplies. It has been a bit of a thing lately. Doreen, happy Friday. Great to see you. Janice, happy Friday. Good evening from northern Minnesota. Minnesota is definitely on my list. I am dying to head out there. I'm dying to go to all the places I haven't been lately. I lived in Europe for so long that I don't have that mindset of like, oh, why would you go anywhere when you haven't seen the whole U.S. Because, of course, the U.S. is one country. But I do have it in me after years of touring the U.S. and Canada to go to the places where the bus didn't allow me to go because they weren't on the itinerary. And Minnesota is certainly one of those places. Sheila, good to see you. Benton City, Washington. I know where Sheila lives from our Zoom calls that it is quite remote. But so happy that you're here. At least we're together here. One way we can do it, right? Thank you, Mom. Happy Friday to you. Joelle, happy Friday. And Kira says, not me. I'm missing part of it. Let's see. Curious Mountain, Kirsten. Great to see you, Kirsten. Kirsten, your cats are so good. I was imagining because you're kind of brainstorming and snowballing ideas on Zoom. I was imagining that you had like no starting point for your cats. Your cats are fantastic and they're out of this world. You shouldn't even think about looking at other sources because what you're doing is super original and it's super successful. You should just keep going with what you're doing. Patricia, cheers from Florida. When we do cheers, I have to do cheers too. See, that little bottle makes like a drop in this little solo cup thing. Mm. I like this cup too, Kara, but I like it when it's more full. That's the only problem. Oh, Mai Tai. Caprice, cheers. Best day of the week. Hi to everyone. Hey, Caprice. Maybe that's a bad policy. Drinking every time someone says hi. Maybe I shouldn't do that. Elaine, great to see you. Happy Friday to you too. Pat from Hamilton, South Ontario. Great to see you. Happy Friday. Christine from Brockport, happy Friday to you too. Dave, now I know that's you. Good evening to you too. Decision time, wine or beer? Must you decide? Can you just double fist it? And Fridays are usually a long show. I have faith that you can put both back successfully. I'm going to switch to wine as soon as this dinky little Mai Tai is all done. April, good evening. Great to see you, April. Let's see. All right, so it looks like we're ready to go. I'm going to be doing 2 screens on the computer tonight because I forgot part of my printout that I needed. And you know what? I don't think I need it at all. I know a new drinking game. Every time someone says hello, you take a drink. That could go terribly wrong, couldn't it? Pat, that's a funny idea, though. It's a funny idea. Kids would like that. I'm so worried about the spring break coming up and all that, watching the news and worrying that the kids are going to make really bad decisions, poor decisions. It's so nice to have fun, and when you're a kid, you just make bad decisions, and I certainly did too. But it's so scary right now with things the way they are. Robin, you made it. Not finally. You did great. We are way at the beginning of our trivia night. Jay, Jay says beer. Always beer. Yeah, I have to be careful with these cocktails. I don't know if you feel the same way, but sometimes I feel like when I drink hard alcohol, I get a bit mean and crazy, more than like with wine and beer and stuff. But the cocktails are just so blingy and James Bondy, and I always feel like having them. So Robin, welcome. I'm very happy to see you, and Michelle, very happy to see you. Happy Friday. We all made it. Linda, cheer. I'm doing it again. Cheers to the weekend, Linda. Great to see you. It has been such a day today. It's been a very strange day for me. I woke up at 5 in the morning because I was afraid I was not going to hear the alarm or the phone or anything that was trying to get me up to get to the dentist early for a crown, a Friday morning crown. And as a result, I woke up at 5 and I went down into the kitchen and started dyeing at 5. I dyed for 3 hours, starting at 5 in the morning. And at one point I thought to myself, is this normal? But at the same time, I thought, well, I'm awake now. I'm doing it. I went and got the crown, and Mom, it was fine. I mean, it doesn't hurt at all. Not a twinge. Dr. Pearl is the best. Not a twinge. But you're sitting there with your mouth open, drooling for like 3 hours. And in that time, you start thinking your crazy thoughts like, I wonder if the Novocaine's wearing off. I wonder if when he takes the jackhammer into my tooth the next time, I'm going to like jump out of my skin, kind of thing. And it just didn't happen. But you think those things because you have so much time when you're getting a crown. But I should not complain because my mother described a dentist thing recently that was like I think I said before, a Bruegel painting, like somebody essentially leaning on your chest with their knee and like ripping stuff out of your head. So it was nothing like that. But it wasn't the best Friday thing. And as a result, with my mouth being so numb and miserable, I did something I have not done in my memory, maybe never, taken a nap. It just doesn't happen because I keep thinking of my grandmother saying that only people who don't have jobs and people who are lazy take naps. So this is like 1930s mentality, but man, it was nice to take a nap. I was in that bed. I had my weighted blanket on me. I was completely numb and I guess essentially drugged, and it was nice to take a nap. And then I woke up and I did 3 more hours of dyeing. So I will have a new beginner's class to announce tomorrow. A historic pattern that we're using in bingo tonight, the duck pattern. And I did 2 sets of dyeing. This is going to be the sort of idea board for the duck. I want to do different colors. I'll show you when the duck comes up what it's going to be, because a lot of people have been writing and saying, is there going to be another beginner's class? And of course there should be. I just forgot and I get busy, and I always appreciate a reminder. So I will announce that tomorrow. I will announce the swatch set tomorrow, and I will announce the weekend in Maine set tomorrow. It is going to be 20, a sampler of 20 colors. You can buy them individually too as a full skein, but 20 colors, and yeah, they all have a Maine theme, like a one last winter in Maine kind of a theme. So it was a busy day today, and I am ready to drink and to play and to have fun together. Glad we did well with the crown. I know. I hate to say bad things about stuff like this, because if you haven't had a crown and you have to do it at some point in the near future, I have to say it really is not a thing. It is not painful by it at all, not a twinge. It just takes a long time, but you probably have better control over your crazy thoughts than I have, because that's really the thing that gets me is crazy thinking. More than pain, because there's no pain, so it was actually fine. But you could definitely think of better ways to spend a Friday morning, right? This is the way to spend Friday night, though. So tonight, for those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is the Ribbon Candy Hooking Channel. I'm Deanna. Please like the video, comment on the video as we go along. I would love to hear your guesses. Trivia night is hard. This is our second trivia night. It's hard. It's general trivia, and we're going to look at the rugs on the download. I have the download listed in the description, and I also put it onto our Facebook group, Rug Hooking and Punch Needle Club on Facebook. And I'm going to show you the pictures as we go, but at least looking at the screen double like I am helps you to look at the image, then look at the question choices. So kind of like a Jeopardy thing. This is our second trivia night. We look at a rug, some old ones, some new ones. It helps us think of ways to new designers, new ideas, old ideas. It brings up a lot of questions. It brings up a lot of new shops that you maybe haven't heard of that you want to go check out after the show. And it's just a lot of fun, and we do trivia and learn something at the same time. So this is not one of our for money nights, like our bingo nights. That will be in 2 weeks. This is our for fun night, all trivia. So biggest pain in the pocketbook. Yeah, it is, Pat. It is. It's a massive copay, even after the insurance does their little dinky part. Thank you so much. Trivia night is fun. Our second one. So let's get started. You know I'm going to be making some announcements and putting some new things up tomorrow. And I just want to remind you that the March kit is out. I am taking orders and getting these out. This is ready to go with all the bling, the bird, the fracture bird coming down into the proddy nest. And it comes with all the charms I've mentioned many times. The enamel butterfly, the little Roman coin, a few truly Victorian buttons, a skeleton key, little gummy bear charm, a bunch of candy wrappers, a little silver hair, as in rabbit. That would be gross. But all these crazy things that a little bird would put into his nest. So the March kit is called Shiny Things, and that is out right now on Ribbon Candy Hooking. So let's go. Let's do this. Let's do this. Now, last time I did, I think, 50 questions because I thought it was the right number, and it was just too much. So I wheedled it down to 40 items tonight. And as we go along, I know there is a delay between live and where you are. So I won't pause because I know you're a little bit behind me, but feel free. It helps the video. It helps the channel to comment. So if you have ideas, don't worry about being wrong. I know you know that. Nobody's worried about being wrong, right? Because we're all buddies. And these are really hard questions. Many of them you will just get because you will know. Many you will get because it is your area of interest, like a lot of gardeners here I know. Painters, people who know about fine art, and a lot of them you just can't get unless you know that very thing. It's as if you were on Jeopardy. You just don't know what category is going to come up, and not everybody knows. So don't feel like a boob at all if you guess the wrong answer, because nobody cares. It's a great confidence builder for everybody when we're just guessing, and we all have different ideas. So why don't we get started? Let me open up my half screen, hope for the best. Oh, thank you, Nani. I'm going to send you that link to that fiber tape video. I didn't forget. I was just afraid to fool too much with the computer when I was about to go live because I am not that good with technology. So let's go to, if you're open to your page or you have your pages printed out, let's go to number 1. I'm going to show you all the items too. It is this beautiful, I'll tell you about it too. This beautiful, I'm going to move my view over, doing some arranging here. This is violets. It's not called anything really. It's an antique rug. You can see it's like a little bowl of violets. You know that time when people would put a lot of flowers into bowls? It was like a moment in time. It does look really pretty. It's a strange bowl for these little violets, but really, really pretty. So your question for violets, this is question number 1. You can circle or comment whatever you think. A violet is the birth flower for February, which is my month. It just happens to be. Maybe it's your month too. I didn't even know there were birth flowers for months. How crazy is that? But I'm very happy to have the violet. And it actually makes sense because the amethyst is for February too. I wonder if it just works that way right through the year. Anyway, a violet is the birth flower for February. And many varieties of violet contain antioxidants. Isn't that nice? Isn't nature amazing? The French use violet to make violet scones. And marshmallows and a lot of other things, of course. Perfumes, a lot of things are made, as with violet as the derivative. Charles Howard of New York City in 1934 created a product, and you may have heard of this. This is a back in the day thing called Chowards, as in Howard's, but with a C, Violet Confectionery Mint, and it had a violet flavor. Now, it was like a candy pastille, like more of a pastille type candy, very minty and refreshing. It's mentioned quite a bit if you watch the Mad Men series. It's mentioned quite a bit because it is that sort of era. They talk about it a lot. It was a very popular product. And it also came out as a gum, if you remember violet gum. It's not for everybody, these perfumey flavors of gum, but I really like them. I really do. Really something different, And a recurring character, if you know the Raymond Chandler series of books, another homicide detective who's a regular character in the book is called Violet's McGee because he always chewed the violet gum. So interesting, right? All these interesting things that you just don't know about violets, or maybe you did, but I certainly didn't. Violet's McGee, I would like to be called that. Mom, you can start calling me that. That sounds so cute. So your question number 1, is which of the following flower is not a birth flower? Do you think it is A, snowdrop, B, sunflower, or C, daffodil? I'll give you just a minute to look. I'm going to see if anybody comments. And then I'm going to come right in with the answer. Now, hey, if you circle your answers as we go, I would love to know at the end of the show what your score was. So let's do 1 point for each one that you get right. I would love to know what your score is. And I really love this rug. That is such a pretty rug. So the correct answer is B, sunflower. I think that one probably wasn't too hard because that would be a wacky kind of a birth flower, right? Ooh, Elaine, you said snowdrop, so I got you there. I got you there. Snowdrop is the flower for January. I'm glad. Sometimes when I make up the answer, I feel like it's so stupid that it was worthless and pointless. But I'm glad that one tricked at least one person. That makes me feel good. Snowdrop is for January. Daffodil is for March. I don't know all of them off the top of my head, but sunflower is the one that I threw in there for funsies. So good job if you got that right, 1 point. Now moving on to number 2. This is a beautiful image by Judy Taylor. We've been talking about her so much. And wasn't it nice that she popped onto Coffee Time the other week, the day that I was doing the t-shirt book? It was her book. I talk about her books often, and she popped on and I saw her name pop up. And then I felt like kind of starstruck, like I had to show off or something, like I was, in high school again. But it was super fun having her, and she was such a nice person to have on, so forthcoming with info. This is Judy Taylor's design from her book called Hooking with Yarn. Beautiful sea turtle, right? So this is question number 2. The sea turtle was entered into zoology books about a century after it was discovered because it never successfully made the trip from South America to London. In other words, this is a long story, and this has been recorded many times. When people would go on these missions to document new animals, new life, new things, new places, they would often bring back sea turtles, and sea turtles indeed were often used as ballast in the bottom of a boat for weight, right? Because there's always a little bit of water that comes in, hopefully just a little, and they can kind of sit there and survive. So they are often used for ballast because they're so heavy. But they never made the journey until 100 years after they were discovered because they were also delicious. And on these journeys, people get tired and worn out, and they've had it, and they can't abide by the rules at a certain point, and they end up eating the turtle, making a soup or something. So it's funny to think that much time elapsed between the discovery of them and they're actually coming to London and arriving in one piece at a port. So it's also the first reptile that was known to be fluorescent, so to glow. Now we know that there's quite a number of them, but that was the first one that people realized was fluorescent. I thought that was interesting too. So this is your question number 2. How long can a sleeping sea turtle remain underwater? Now, this is tricky because amphibians always do crazy things. They have crazy possibilities. So the options are A, 30 minutes, B, 2 hours, or C, 6 hours. This is one of these things, Martha, you might know because you're a biologist. But this is just one of these things that I think is maybe a guess for most people because it's just hard to know. But the answer is actually C. A sea turtle can remain underwater for between 4 and 7 hours. So that falls flatly into C. That's a long time. Let me see if anybody's writing over here. I want to be sure I'm paying attention to both. Oh, good. You're making good guesses. Good, good, good. So, all right. So moving on to number 3. This is another antique rug. A lot of these antique rugs, like last time I did trivia, because trivia is not like something we bet with, and it takes a couple days for me to do. So I always pull the antique rugs that have no copyright issues that I've chosen for the show, and I put them on ribbon candy hooking. If you're interested in antique rugs, the 2 Parrots is one that I did too. I think it's called two Polys or something like that. But I think this is an exquisite image. Let me show you if you don't have it pulled up. Pretty sort of fracture, possible cookie cutter design, right? When we did that class, I did a few of these classes, like the Edward Sands Frost stencil classes. We got to get back to that too. But oh, Martha, you're a botanist. Don't know anything about turtles. Well, it's good to guess. It's good to guess. But yeah, this is one of these great designs that when you fold the paper in half and then you do traces. Tracing back and forth, you got a double, and you've got a really strong composition just having a double in that sort of configuration. I love this rug. So this is number 3. Unfortunately, this is an antique rug, but the link for Pinterest was dead, so I can't tell you anything more about it. I would love to give you the blog it initially came off of. Oh, you thought it was 7:30, Heather? Nope, 7, but we're only on number 3. I was fooling around drinking my Mai Tai, and we were talking about crowns, and all that, but we're only on number 3. So we all know parrots, I believe these are parrots, are among the most intelligent birds, along with all kinds of jays, ravens, crows, and magpies. Their wild population has been diminished over time because they're so popular as pets. They're found in all tropical and subtropical continents, so they're all over the place. Their most important food is seeds, and that's why they have that really, really pronounced beak for cracking into stuff to get the seeds out. They are also known to be monogamous, which I think is so cute, and non-territorial, except if they have nesting sites. Of course, they're nesting sites. That's always a game changer. Your question about parrots is, which famous politician owned a parrot that lived to be 114 years old? Was it A, Winston Churchill? Was it B, Franklin Roosevelt? Or was it C, Thomas Jefferson? Let me know what you think. I will take a sip and then I'll see what your answers are. You know, if you did this rug design and you did the two parrots, I mean, it's so pretty like this. It's very well balanced, of course. There's like perfect sort of balance. But, you know, if you likewise did them in two different colors, that would still be a fantastic composition. Look at that beautiful antique black background. All those different shades of black. Who knows if it's faded over time or if they just used different blacks from different garments or blankets or whatever. So let's see what your answers were here. B. Getting a resounding B. Oh, it's hard to balance two windows, I'll tell you that. Churchill. Churchill is the right answer. He was known, and his bird, I didn't catch the name of it. I think I was looking at Wikipedia. His bird was known for having a really foul swear mouth, saying lots of swears, and also for going on rants that he would obviously be copying Churchill, rants about the Nazis. So understandable, right? But this was a bird to not take to parties, it sounds like. This is a bird who was very objectionable. But a lot of you knew that, so that's really good. Do you remember the news story a few years back about the girl that was murdered? And this is a true story. It was maybe 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But the suspicion fell on her boyfriend, and there was nothing they could do to pin him. It was like one of these great locked room type crimes. And at the end of the day, they brought her pet Parrot into court, and they actually used the testimony of the parrot because the parrot was so traumatized by seeing his person killed, this woman. He would keep going through the entire scene like, "No, John, stop, you're hurting me," you know, while he was strangling her. And it was actually used in court. It was an interesting court case because it was like it set a precedent for the possibility of using a bird in court. But it's a true story. I'm not making that up. It was a great news item a few years ago. So moving on to number 4. This is a beautiful image from Minnick and Simpson Blogspot. So in other words, Polly Minnick. I've reviewed a couple of her books. We were just talking about Minnick and Simpson the other day. Let me bring it into focus here. She does so many, they together also do so many beautiful patriotic images. I love this bicycle. Look at the way that the handlebars are flying. Remember those streamers you used to put on your bike just to give them that extra superhero feel? Little bike basket with the flag sticking out and the stars all the way around. This is just such a gorgeous image. So again, Minnick and Simpson Blogspot. It's by Polly Minnick. It's also available as a quilt design, same exact image. So for you quilters, if you prefer that. So the first bicycle was named the Dandy Horse. It sounds pretty fitting. It was invented by a German baron, and it did not have pedals. This is in 1817. So in other words, you would sit on it. It had 2 wheels, but it did not have pedals, and you would use your feet to kind of scoot forward with it, right? So that was the first sort of evolution. The bicycle is associated with female emancipation in the bicycle craze of the 1890s. I happen to have a lot of books on this subject because at one time I was doing this Choose Your Own Adventure on my old blog spot when I was living abroad. And it was set in the 1890s. It was about a group of men and women who took this bicycle adventure in this made-up town that was really like a Cape Cod town. And there's the presence of a sea monster or a suggested sea monster. And every day the people would choose, based on the paragraph I wrote, what they wanted to do next. Like the Choose Your Own Adventures, like, I would like to go into the basement that there's strange noises coming out of, or I would like to go to the shore and check out the skeleton, you know, of the sea monster. And as a result, that night I would write the next installment. So I happened to acquire a lot of books on bicycles in the 1890s, particularly relating to women and the idea of rational dress. So this is like early feminist stuff, getting away from the corsets and the hoops, because of course you could not wear those things on a bicycle. You would have to wear something that was more like a skirt with like pantaloons or bloomers underneath. So the rational dress, as it was called then of the 1890s, for suffragettes, the bicycle was called the freedom machine, probably in more ways than one. Freedom from your costume, but also freedom from your immediate surroundings. If you are then able to get your bike onto the road and ride over to the next town by yourself or in a group of friends, that would have been something really new for that time. Not every parent would allow it, I'm sure. But the bicycle craze was a prototype for the mass-produced bike. So as soon as this craze happened, the bicycle became an item that people all wanted to have, like the automobile years later. And the prototype for the first bike that people would buy appeared at the World Fair in 1892 in St. Louis. So if you know the movie Meet Me in St. Louis, it's that fair. The whole movie climax is at the 1892 fair. And it was actually designed by Swedish engineers. But interesting history to the bike. Now your question, in what country do bicycles outnumber the people? Is it A, China, B, France, or C, the Netherlands? Now that's a tough one, because you probably know that in all of these countries, people are ferocious bicyclers. But I will tell you that the answer is the Netherlands. And you know, I was born there and I lived there for a long, long time. And I was a biker then too. You would always want to watch out for the 3 T's: tourists, tram tracks, and I think it was like trains or something else, some other T. But I mean, there's so many ways to hurt yourself on a bike in a big city like that. It was unbelievable. I only had one colossal wipeout, and it didn't involve too much blood. It involved more of this kind of thing. So it was really shame on me. But the answer is the Netherlands. Bikes certainly outnumber people. Probably just stolen bikes outnumber people. Every time I would have a drink and forget to lock my bike up, it would 100% be gone in the morning. Super frustrating. So moving on to number 5. Look at this great image by Claire Murray. I know I don't think any of you, I think a lot of people sort of scorn her and scoff her, but I love what she's done with her business empire, doing something with rugs that brought it right to the front, right into people's living rooms. Taxi, that's a good one. Yep, that's it. Taxi, that's it. Because you know they don't slow down for anybody, do they? One of our good friends actually got hit by a city bus riding her bike, and she didn't do too well after that. She survived, and she's still one of my best friends. But she did not do too well, and they didn't do too much to help her either. So this beautiful image, Claire Murray, this is called Nantucket Island. And this is really what it looks like. I wonder if you've been to Nantucket Island. If you haven't, please put it on your bucket list. If you love history, you love rugs, you love things that are beautiful to look at, to smell, old windmills, beautiful views, the water in such a quiet way. If you like quiet and you like the sea and you like green and lots of flowers, it's going to be a good place for you. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. Nantucket Island. So this island it's one of the 2 islands off of Cape Cod. The other one's Martha's Vineyard. Nantucket is much, much further out. If you take the slow ferry, it's going to be like 3+ hours. If you take the fast ferry, you can't take your car because it's so small. And it really goes at like a warp speed. Like you feel like an astronaut or a space traveler. It's almost like your face is like this, you know, when you're on the boat. But it's a lot of fun to get there in under an hour. Lots of dolphins swimming out there and things too. So nice. And whales, known for its famous whalers. Now, lots of famous whale ships associated with the island of Nantucket. Do you remember the author Nathaniel Philbrick, who's written a lot of history books that are phenomenal? Great histories, a little bit of sort of artistic license because we don't know the whole story to many of these. But he wrote a book called The Whale Ship Essex, or maybe it's just called Essex, by Nathaniel Philbrick. And it is a great account of one of the many whaling ships that left Nantucket and did not have a good ending. This is the whale ship that you probably know ended up, a whale hit it. Like they took one of the baby whales, calves, I guess. They got one. And they brought it up on the boat, and they were skinning it like an apple. Like they cored it by turning the ropes and spinning it on a little dock, and then they bring it up on the boat, and they would put it in the tri-pot, which meant burning it and burning the blubber down and taking all the pieces off that were worth something. But the mother whale was present, and she apparently, by all accounts, swam out, because there were survivors, I bet they wish they hadn't survived, swam out, did a hairpin turn, came back and hit that boat at a speed that we can't even guess at, but it shattered. And a few people survived by getting on the debris and being lost at sea for a long time. And of the people who survived, the thing that makes the story horrible but also quite famous is that the way that they survived was they had to resort to cannibalism. When people would die, that was just what they had to do to survive. And the book, the Essex book by Nathaniel Philbert, goes through this in great detail. And there are some great moments I remember from my touring days, because I took people out to the islands when I was a tour guide. There are horrible but memorable stories, like one man who lost his mind after this event. He survived, so he had been a cannibal. Often they would take a bird and cut it up, and then take a person and cut it up too. I'm still good for one more minute. And then you would know which one you were getting. So if you got both tastes, you would know at some point that it maybe wasn't the bird, or that it wasn't good in any case. But this person who survived, I forget what his name is, but he started hoarding in a way that people do when they're in crisis and when there's a lot of emotional damage. And he would hoard everything. I mean, this is like 19th century hoarding, but every kind of food, vegetable. His house was absolutely filled. Like if he ever was going to run out again, he was just really lost it. And a reporter came to his house one day, this is a true story, and said, did you know so-and-so? And it was actually his nephew who had been on the boat with them. And he responded, unfortunately, by saying, do I know him? I ate him. And it made headlines all over the place, because it was just unfortunate that he did not have his wits about him and that he would say it in that manner. But interesting and great historic stories, part of our lives, part of our history, based on Nantucket, and also the Whaling Museum, which is beautiful. So if you do go to Nantucket, don't think that you're just going to get those kinds of terrible tragedy type stories, because if you go this year to Nantucket, their upcoming exhibits at the Whaling Museum are an exhibit of historic paperweights, historic transferware, meaning beautiful plates, sea glass, and the history of the old Gaul, which is the old jail. I think all of those things sound fantastic. So your question is about Nantucket. If you've been there, you know the answer. What is Nantucket's nickname? Is it A, the Gray Lady, B, Mermaid Island, or C, the Windy Isle? Great chowder, that's right. So the answer is, I'm just looking at your comments, the answer is A, the Gray Lady. The other two, they could have been. I made those two up. The Gray Lady, because it's often shrouded in mist and mystery. It's so nice to approach. And there is a regulation on the island about the color that you can have your house. So most houses are like white or natural shingled. Also restrictions on, good job, Mom. We should go there this summer, by the way. We should really go there this summer. We always say that, but we should do it without the kids. So it's very gray. The approach with all the houses, they're all pretty much gray because they're all really weather-beaten natural shingles. So beautiful. You've got to go. So I've got to speed things up too. Number 6 is going to be this beautiful flower basket. This is going to be a basket question. I'm going to tie it into our last question. Let me bring it into focus. Was that awful, Robin? Did you get it wrong, or was that just too terrible a story? No, really, Mom. Let's go. Let's take the high-speed ferry and splash it out. So this is the next one. This is an image from Christie's, the auction house. It's a flower basket. No further information. Can't see what it sold for, but this is a beautiful square early hooked rug. So we were just talking about whales. So this is a question about baskets. What part of a whale's body historically, meaning like in the 19th century, the age of whaling, because of course it's not allowed now, which part of the whale's body was used to make baskets? Now don't think about scrimshaw, and not scrimshaw, the actual basket part. And your choices are, was it A, spermaceti, was it B, ambergris, or C, baleen? I'm going to take a sip and then I'm going to give you the answer. The answer is C, baleen. And you might know this. Oh, good, Robin. I was hoping the story wasn't too much for you. I go overboard sometimes. Spermaceti is not the answer. That's the waxy substance in like the head cavity of a sperm whale. It's like beautiful white crystals. Really useful for making it's scentless. So they would make they would be used for like candles and cosmetics. It's because they were waxy, good coverage, and no scent, because most things that burned had an awful stink, but spermaceti doesn't, so it was very valuable. And ambergris, another really waxy, solid substance that's kind of gray or blackish, sometimes washes up on the shore, and if you find it, can be worth tens of thousands of dollars. It's produced in the digestive system of a sperm whale again, so this is one of the reasons sperm whales were really on the list of the whales to get. highly valued by people who did perfumes ever since it's been discovered. As a base for perfume, as a fixative, it cannot be beat. So to this day, it is still very, very valuable. The answer is baleen. Baleen is inside the mouth of whales that are vegetarian whales. For example, like a blue whale. And if you can picture them opening their mouth, they don't have teeth because they don't need to. They kind of swim around with their lips open. And when they open their mouths, it kind of looks like if you opened a piano, all those long sort of wooden-looking narrow strips, that's baleen. And when you pull it out, it serves as plastic. I mean, its properties are almost interchangeable with modern plastic. So using baleen for corsets, for baskets, for lots of things would have been like using an early plastic and would have been an amazing discovery for people at that time. So good job if you got that right. Number 7. This is a gorgeous image. I got this off Etsy from the shop called capital letter L, capital letter C, LC's Wool N, the letter N, Silk. LC's Wool and Silk, Etsy shop. She has the licensing for all of the David Galshu or Galchit artwork, and she transfers it all. I know you've seen this on the various Facebook groups. She transfers it all onto backing, large patterns. I'm going to try to bring her in focus. This is a gorgeous one, beautiful sort of Restoration era woman, but look at who she's got here. You recognize the Punch and Judy, and it actually says Punch and Judy. So this question is going to be about Punch and Judy. This is a David Galshu is the correct pronunciation, but I think we're used to saying Galchit. Unfortunately, LC's Wool and Silk. The figure who later became Mr. Punch, so the character who became the puppet, made his first recorded appearance in England in 1662. That is the Restoration period, which began in 1660. It was a period during which theater thrived because immediately before this period, King Charles II took over the throne and replaced the Puritan leader, who was Oliver Cromwell, right, during their Civil War. And once Oliver Cromwell was gone, theater came back, life, color, living came back, and puppet shows came in. So Punch and Judy is a traditional puppet show that featured Mr. Punch and his wife, Judy. If you've been to London, you've probably seen people performing this, or in seaside towns in England. It's still very popular. The performance consisted of a sequence of short scenes, like little short acts, each depicting the interaction of the two characters, and then a lot of side characters. It's a very slapstick show, and you know, they beat each other with bats and things like that. It's super insensitive and all that stuff, but quite funny, and kids get a good laugh out of it. So your question is, which of these characters is not from, oh, Cynthia, welcome. You just made it. We're way at the beginning. I'm super slow, so I'm racing now. But we have a lot more to go, so welcome. Glad that you're there. Which of these characters is not from a Punch and Judy show? A, the milkman, B, the hangman, or C, the crocodile? And I wonder how well you know Punch and Judy. I wonder if Punch and Judy exists in Canada, because certainly not in the U.S. This is not like one of our sort of tropes. People don't typically, you know, of Punch and Judy from maybe British TV, BBC shows, but not from life, not from visiting a town and seeing a puppet show. Although I know in the Albert Finney version of the musical Scrooge that there's the scene at the beginning with the guy doing the Punch and Judy that's super cute. So the answer is a milkman. I made that one up. There is indeed a hangman in Punch and Judy. Good job, Janice. You got it. And there is a crocodile too. So you can only imagine the kind of scenarios that play out when you've got a hangman and a hangman and a crocodile in a kids show. Lots of possibilities. So good job if you got that right. Another point for you. Now here comes number 8. This is such a funny rug. This is a nice antique rug. It appeared at the Colonial Williamsburg exhibit last year, 2020. An exhibit that was called, just like the Kopp book, Joel and Kate Kopp, Art Underfoot. Nothing to do with them, just the same name for the show. This show opened in 2020 and ran through September. So I don't know. I was not in Colonial Williamsburg last year, and I'm just wondering if any of you were, if it went okay, because it wasn't a great year for tourism. But this is one of the beautiful antique rugs. Oh, Kira says, we were visiting my parents in Ireland and almost fell over when it came on the tube. Oh, right. It's so crazy. They do such crazy things, you know. They're such fun, loving people, the British. I think about walking around Covent Garden, like back when I worked in the theater and I lived over there, was doing school and stuff, and having these jacket potatoes, baked potatoes like this big, that was your meal, and they would just cut them in half and put a bunch of Indian food on top or something, or a bunch of chili on top. So I could not eat that now. I mean, my pants are unbuttoned right now. I could not do that these days, but watching Punch and Judy shows and hearing people sing opera, so nice. It's time to travel again, right? Let me bring this guy in focus. Come on, you stinker. Why is it doing this to me? I hope you're getting the gist of it. I can see that he's not exactly in focus. There he goes. There he goes. Devil eyes. So this is a cat. This is like a weird kind of primitive kitten. Again, this is an antique rug. This is one that I put up with a beautiful rosebud border. Not really a part of Canada, Dave says, the Punch and Judy. Folks might know it based on English background. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I never saw it anywhere in Canada, but I thought there's such a strong cultural link, right, that there was always a possibility. It's probably phasing out anywhere because it's super violent at the end of the day. So this is a rug from Colonial Williamsburg, 2020. I really hope that that show opened, or at least that it will open again, because I would love to go see some of these antique rugs. So interesting things about cats that you might not know. I certainly did not know that cats have 230 bones. That's 24 more bones than a human being, which is interesting. Frequently, these are trivia things about cats. Cats stare with their mouths open because they have an extra organ that tastes scents in the air. Now, wouldn't that be something to be able to taste a scent? I guess that's why they're always searching for food and aware when someone has anything on their plate. Cats move with their right feet and then their left, right? So not a lot of animals do that. The only other animals that do that are camels and giraffes. So that is just an oddity about cats. The question I have for you is, which writer is known for having lots of cats, but particularly polydactyl cats? Polydactyl simply means that there's extra toes. Do you know which writer this was? Is it A, Ernest Hemingway, B, John Steinbeck, or C, Truman Capote? I'm going to pop over and see if you're commenting here. And I will tell you so we can keep moving forward. The answer is Ernest Hemingway. If you've been to his house in Key West, there are still like dozens of cats there. He also had a lot of cats at his home in Cuba called Finca, even more cats. The plural of cats is a clouder of cats. Yep, you got it, Mom. I think maybe if you haven't been to Key West and you don't, or you're not a huge Hemingway fan, that this isn't common knowledge, but it's interesting that in both of his homes where he spent most of his time, many of you do know it, he loved his cats. And it is hereditary, this polydactyl thing. So most of the cats, it's like more than 50% of the cats in Key West have the polydactyl paws, which is just an interesting thing to see and a great house to visit. Now here comes number 9. This is actually a latch hook. This was made by Shillcraft, for those of you who enjoy latching. This is an Egyptian-themed question, and here it comes for you. Yeah, they are everywhere. I haven't been to Key West in many years, but it's so much fun down there. And certainly for people who like the arts, there's always like Sloppy Joes and all that. I don't want to say lowbrow, but all of that fun stuff you can do. But there's a lot of nice literary stuff to do, too, and artsy stuff to do, and that's certainly one of them. Yeah, I'll have some wine. Thank you. So my question for you is going to be based, this is an Egypt question. That's why I've got this Sphinx head for you. Now, King Tut, this is going to be specifically King Tut question. The tomb was discovered in 1922, thank you so much, by Howard Carter. It's hot. Can you turn it down? I know, I'm like sweating, everything's off. By Howard Carter, 1922. Now, at that time, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who of course wrote the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, suggested that the series of deaths that happened after the King Tut tomb was discovered, he suggested that they were caused by elementals, meaning spirits. Now he was somebody who believed in spirits, right? The Cottingham fairies or something like that. He really believed in spirits and fairies and table rapping and seances and all of that. So him suggesting that really kicked up a media surge talking about the curse of King Tut's tomb. So as we know now, as grown-ups, as time has gone by, you have time to look at things and study things and use your head, emotions and passions aside, the media interest that kicked this up was tremendous. But we know now that one death was caused by, it was the person who was the financial backer, caused by an infected mosquito bite, which could happen and did happen often. One was caused by a fever, like a flu-type cold fever. One was caused by arsenic poison, and it is not clear at all whether this is a murder, like Agatha Christie style, or whether this is just some kind of an overdose, because of course people took arsenic for a lot of things, but poisoning. And Carter's secretary also died later in a shooting that was suspicious, so possibly a murder. But none of these things really could be attributed to King Tut's curse. These are all sort of medical things and a weird series of coincidences, to be sure. But my question for you is, how many people were victims of the curse? In other words, how many people died when King Tut's tomb was opened and were later thought to have been victims of the curse? Is it A5, B10, or C15? And the answer is, it's only 5. So it wasn't like it was insane. But again, strange series of coincidences. And of course, when you travel, you open yourself up to all kinds of illnesses, like a mosquito bite can kill you, particularly in the early 20th century. Medicine, not so good, especially when you're on like some kind of a makeshift site doing archaeological stuff. So good job if you got that question. Let's move on to number 10. This is a beautiful image by Jane Steele, Steele. This is open for bidding right now. Good job, Janice. I appreciate all of the guesses. This is by Jen Steele. It's called Mardi Girl, as in Mardi Gras, but Mardi Girl. This is for this is up on auction. I've never heard of this site before. It's called www.ebasandboyth.com, and this is up for auction. I'd never heard of it. I thought maybe it was a Canadian site, although it's .com. But anyway, this is currently up. And I think it's about 400 right now, which I think is great. I hope it just keeps going and going because I love Jane's work. And you can Google her too. She's got a shop. I think she's in Canada. But I've bought stuff from her in the past, and she really is a lovely person and nice to deal with. It's currently at 400, I wrote. The site is actually called, full name, Everything But The House. So that's the ebth.com. Now, I'm asking you a question about Carnival. So this is as close as I could get for an image. Carnival in Venice. Have you been to Venice? This is a big, I didn't realize how many travel questions I put in here. Historically, during the Venice carnivals in the past, Venice, the city of Venice in Italy, would be full of people wearing masks and costumes. Now, historically, the reason for this was not to dress up like it was Halloween, but it was to protect your identity, because you were probably doing some fairly naughty things. With social differences, you normally, back in the day that this started, hundreds of years ago, you would not sort of cross social barriers and social lines. But if nobody knew who you were, you could be dating the waitress or the person, your landlord or whoever. When I say dating, I don't exactly mean dating, but you could be doing all kinds of stuff with the mask on and nobody would know. Your identity would be safe. So all kinds of licentious and crazy type activities. Now, according to Venetian tradition, Venice's carnival got its start in 1162, so more than a few hundred years, when the townspeople celebrated the victory, the citywide victory over the patriarch of, the person was called the Patriarch of Aquileia. Festivities, I don't know what he did wrong, but he was obviously well disliked. Festivities became the festival, and people, I guess, just took to the streets and went nuts and celebrated, put costumes on so they could do what they pleased. And this went on for years and then declined in the 18th century. So it went on for hundreds of years and then in the 18th century dwindled. But it returned and I was really surprised by this, 1979. So not that long ago, there was no Carnival. It was just life. Now, my question for you, I wonder if you've been there, because I've been to Venice, but I have not been to Carnival. To be honest, I'm not sure I would want to go, because I'm a bit of a safety puss, and I don't know if I would like people running around the streets with masks on. But it is a great bucket list experience, isn't it? What month does Carnival take place? Is it A, February, B, April, or C, June? And the answer is February. So I can't remember what months I've been to Venice, but I think I've always been a little bit later in the year, and I'm just wondering what the weather's like in Venice in February. It must be mild enough, although when you picture people wearing Carnival costumes, they're like cloaks and heavyweight type things. Let us know if you've gone. I'd love to hear some Carnival stories. It might inspire a great rug, right, from your memory museum. Yeah. Good guesses. I love to see those guesses coming in. So here comes number 11 for you. I'm on a little bit of a, you're on a little bit of a delay for me, so I'm pushing on to number 11. Isn't this beautiful? This is one of these rugs I took off from one of these mass sort of produced websites. It's called, well, I'm going to have to move my cursor to see the name. I'll tell you in a second. I just want to show it to you first. The rug itself is called Bloomer and Birds. I just thought that was an exquisite rug. I'll show you again in a minute. And the site is called wildlifewonders.com. Wildlifewonders.com. So I just, it's one of these mass-produced ones. It's $198 for a welcome mat size, so it's not like they're giving it away. But isn't that a fantastic composition? Can you see yourself doing something like this, breaking something up into compartments and putting in your favorite birds, your state bird or your state flower or whatever? I just think it's a really sweet composition. Now, do you remember the actor and the TV show host James Lipton, also writer? Super guy, great personality. I'm pretty sure he's passed away now. But he wrote a great book in 1968 called The Exaltation, I love that rug too, Chrissy, The Exaltation of Larks. And what it was a book that was illustrated that told you what the collective name was for all kinds of birds. Because you know how animals and birds have collective names, and they're always so odd, and you wonder why. So for larks, it's an exaltation of larks. For example, the correct term for owls is a parliament of owls. And the correct term for chickens is peeps, a peeps of chickens. For buzzards, a wake. That's kind of appropriate, isn't it? A wake of buzzards. This is your question, what is the correct term for a group of lapwings, the bird, the lapwings? What do you think it is? A bevy, B, a deceit, or C, an asylum? Now, aren't all of those great? I can see a rug coming on here with that kind of composition, with all of these great phrases and words thrown in. And the answer is B, a deceit of lapwings. If you're interested, a bevy is doves, a bevy of doves, and an asylum of loons. Interesting, right? So let's move on. We'll keep going. Let's go on to this really pretty image, I think. This is from a website called The Globe and Mail. And this is a rug by Joanna Close, C-L-O-S-E, and it's called The Kitchen. This is an article from Globe and Mail from 2016 called Modern Hookers. And this was taken from, I love all your guesses. You got it, Mama. Well, you have that book, Exaltation of Larks, after all. This was taken from an exhibit in Canada. The Textile Museum of Canada shines a spotlight on current rug hooking. It showed a lot of different people, and Joanna Close was one of them. Now, the thing that I was pulling out of this image was the modern kitchen range. It was invented by a man named Count Rumford, and the idea behind it was to modify and restrict the airflow in the chimney. So using your chimney, you would put a stove that looked like a modern range into your chimney and create a cooking environment. And it looked like a cylindrical oven with holes in it, holes in the top where you could insert pots. And when you didn't need the pots, you could leave it open so that the fire inside would smolder and create heat. So this was a really, this is pre-Franklin stove, of course, very fuel efficient than an open hearth was, of course, with the heat just going in every direction. Now, Rumford is also known for Rumford's soup. Count Rumford is a quite famous person. I wasn't able to find out if you own or you know of the Rumford cookbook, because I have it. I bought it at an antique store years ago. It's very, very common. I wonder if it's the same Rumford. If you know, let me know, because I was really curious and I couldn't find out. He's known for soup. He's also known for his early experiments with scientific nutrition. So trying to feed people right, not just feed you, but to feed you right and make your body, a healthy sort of machine. He was employed by he was an advisor to the Duke of Bavaria, so he was an employee of the Duke of Bavaria, and he made soup that was used, in ration for like military workhouses, for the poor, for prisons, for all. I know military shouldn't fall into that category, but he's also credited with establishing the world's first soup kitchen. So I thought this was just all interesting trivia. Somebody that would be such a sort of entrepreneur with nutrition, putting a shape to it, right? And trying to make people who are in the poorhouse or the workhouse or in prison still healthy. Now, what decade do you think this was? Because this is a pretty innovative idea. Do you think it's the 1790s, the 1820s, or the 1860s? And I will tell you, for the sake of moving along, that it was the 1790s. So that is the sort of era of the modern range, pretty early on. You probably guessed that. I was trying to throw you off the scent, but to me, that's quite early to be thinking about nutrition and those kinds of innovations. So interesting. So 13, let's look at this next image. This is, I need help with this one. All I could find, so many people had repinned it, including Jean Shepherd, on Pinterest. And you know, Pinterest can be like a, dead end, whatever, cul-de-sac for every link. But it definitely was in the book called Inspiring Rug Hooking by Dion Fitzpatrick. And it says by Claudia, but it doesn't say her last name on any of the links or any of the repins. If you know who this is, please let me know. I loved this image because, it's springtime and we're looking at summer. These ladies sitting in Adirondack chairs, I just thought this was super charming. So my question for you is going to be about the Adirondacks. If you're a New Yorker, you have a leg up on this one. Do you know the word Adirondack? If you don't know, particularly if you're from another country, the Adirondacks are a mountain range in New York State. Great vacation spot, very popular vacation spot for many years. The word Adirondack is derived from an insult, and this is how it works. Before white settlers showed up, this area that is now the Adirondacks was inhabited by two groups, the Mohawks and the Iroquois. We say the Iroquois Confederacy now, and their Algonquin neighbors. So these are all people who warred between them. During tougher times, the latter sometimes fed on tree bark to survive. So in other words, ate tree bark. And the Iroquois, we're talking about the Algonquin, the Iroquois began calling the Algonquin the Hadaranda. That's the Indian word for it. And it got anglicized to the word Adirondack from Hadaranda. So that's where we get the word Adirondack, by insulting people by telling them they eat the barks of trees. Now, this is your question for number 13. What is the highest peak in the Adirondack range? You have to have been there, or you have to be a geography major to get this one. Is it A, Mount Skylight, B, Mount Mercy, or C, Mount Haystack? These are all mountains in that range. But I will tell you the answer is B, Mount Marcy. I think I said Mercy, it's Marcy. Mount Skylight is 4,925 feet. Mount Haystack is 4,961 feet. Oh, Christine says you go to the Adirondacks Mohawk Valley every year. It's so beautiful there. Isn't it so old-timey beautiful? The woods, the water, it's just heaven. Mount Haystack is a good guess, Mom, but no, Mount Marcy is 5,344 feet. That's like on a par with like western ranges. I remember being out in Yellowstone and looking at altitudes that were between 5,000 and 6,000 daily. So that's pretty high. That's pretty high for this part of the country. So the correct answer was B, Mount Marcy. Let's go down to the next one, number 14. Look at this great image. Look at this crazy Red Riding Hood image. Isn't this fantastic? Let me get you in focus here. Come on, Wolf. You can do it. You can do it, Wolf. There we go. I gotta find a better way. Jay's gonna put some kind of an app on my thing so I can share my screen with you too. I'm always afraid for crazy pop-ups and stuff, but these photos are just not cutting it. So this is a beautiful photo called rug called In the Woods, 2013. It is from a blog spot called Ramu Designs. So BAA Ram RAMUEW Designs, blogspot.com. It is by Tanya, no last name, just Tanya, and her company is Ba with 2 A's, Ramu Designs. Now, I loved this image. She talked on her blog spot about one of her friends wanting an image of Little Red Riding Hood and her creating this image for the friend. And it's a real nice story. It's a nice blog entry, so check out that blog spot if you have time. Check it out even if you don't have time. It's a nice blog. So my question for you is about the musical theater. Now, there is a musical that became a movie later. I forgot about the movie. A musical called Into the Woods. And it featured songs like No One Is Alone. These are all some of my favorite songs of all time. The Last Midnight, which was sung by Bernadette Peters, who shares my birthday twin. And Children Will Listen, which are all beautiful songs. Now, do you know who the person was who composed Into the Woods? Was it A, Andrew Lloyd Webber, B, Stephen Sondheim, or C, Maury Yeston? Let me know what you think, C's. And I'm going to keep scooting along. I'm taking too long tonight. My mouth is flapping, huh? The answer is my all-time favorite, Stephen Sondheim. I cannot get enough Stephen Sondheim. One of my past email addresses was worshipsondheim.com. It's a little sacrilegious, but I love him so much. I used to have a locket with Stephen Sondheim's face in it. And indeed, one time when I was working in London, I went into the musical theater CD store there, and they told me that Stephen Sondheim had just left. And I literally ran out of the store with everything that was in my arms like a proper thief. Ran out. It was like someone said, like, the Beatles are here, you know, like, I went nuts, and I didn't see him, and that was probably my one chance. Although he's still alive, Stephen Sondheim, Into the Woods, one of the great shows of all time. And the movie is really good, too, with James, what's his name, Corwin, the British guy that does a lot of interviews, and he does the thing in his car with the karaoke. Super fun, super fun. So here comes number 15 for you. Number 15, this is by encompassingdesigns.com. Which is owned by Christine Little. Now, if you do not know encompassingdesigns.com, you have got to go. Mark it down on your paper. You have got to go. I had not been to the site, or if I had, it was a while ago. I went out of my mind when I went through her design. I went out of my mind. And you know, I don't do a lot of other people's commercial patterns because I'm too busy with ribbon candy hooking. I'm going to make some serious exceptions because Christine's designs were unbelievable. Other people on her site too, encompassingdesigns.com. So the question I'm going to ask you based on this rug, and the rug is called Good Old Hockey Game, and it was hooked by Sandra Murphy. The question I'm going to ask you is, what country's team has won the most Olympic medals for hockey? Hope this one isn't too obvious. Is it A, Canada, B, the US, or C, Russia? I think we're going to have a sort of Grand Slam clean sweep with this one. I think you probably, I'm giving too much away because maybe it was a tricksy question. But of course the answer is Canada. Of course the answer is Canada. 15 gold medals. Of course it is. Canadians love their hockey, but so do Vermonters, right? Everybody I know who's from Vermont is a crazy hockey head. Moving on to number 16. Look at this great image of these ladies eating ice cream. That's just what you need to see, right? Coming out of the winter. Oh, good, Heather, you guessed Russia. That makes me feel like I was tricksy. Come on. There we go. 3 ladies. Isn't this great? You know, when you do, again, repeat patterns, always successful. Looks like your pond hockey. Oh, in Minnesota, Janice, isn't that nice? I would love to have a local pond that looks like that. That is so, and the dog's out there too. The dog's sitting out there too. I like the swirls of motion in that. So this one is number 16. It's called The Girls Doing Ice Cream, and it is by the Honey Beehive. I'm sure you know the Honey Beehive, but if you don't, check it out. Another great rug hooking site. Now, there are 4 kinds of ice cream. Do you know this? It goes without being said once you hear this. The ice cream that we know that is like ice cream, cream ice cream. Also gelato, which has less cream, right? It's more of it like a light version. Sorbet, which has no milk, and it's basically just sugar and fruit juice, and frozen yogurt. So those are the 4 distinct categories of ice cream. The first ice cream parlor opened in Paris, France in the 17th century, and it was named after its Sicilian founder. So probably it was more like modern day gelato. And it introduced, it says, gelato to the public. The first ice cream factory in the United States was built in 1851 by Jacob Fussell. He was a milk dealer, like a milkman, who bought dairy products from local farmers and sold them in the local cities. Before 1800, ice cream was known, but it was super rare, it was super expensive, and it was, as most things were, for the rich. So when he opened this first American ice cream company and he made it available to everybody, it was a huge game changer. In what city was this first 1851 ice cream factory established? Boston, A, B, Milwaukee, or C, Philadelphia? Give it your best shot. This is a piece of local history that you might not know, and I tried to make it tricky. But the answer is C, Philadelphia. I put in Milwaukee because it's like the dairy state. I thought that might be tricky. But the answer is C, Philadelphia. And if you got it, congratulations. Another point to you. How are you doing with points? What's everybody's point tally so far? Good job, Mom. You got it. Well, you know, the thing with that is that all of the farms are there, right? Like all of the Amish people, Mennonite people, all Shakers, all of those farms are there, all of the Anabaptist community. And, of course, they were big dairy people. Oh, good. It's mixed. I like that. I like that. So now here comes another image from Encompassing Designs. You know how different people have different images. Like I have the Nancy Thomases, I have the Schmetz Pets. Encompassing Designs has the William Morris. They're out of copyright, so it's not like they have them, but they do them, and they're known for doing them. And this is one of the beautiful William Morris designs that Encompassing Designs does. This is, I think, probably the most famous textile of William Morris. It's called the Strawberry Thief, the birds with the strawberries in their beaks. They're big seed eaters, right? And a whole strawberry is a seed, right? It's not a fruit, it's a seed. Because the little seed parts are the fruits. I think that's the way it works. Martha, you must know that one, right? I think I've heard that. But anyway, the Strawberry Thief, such a great design. And that particular one was hooked by Michael. So she says Encompassing Designs on the site. She doesn't say Michael's last name. She just says it was hooked by my friend Michael, and it was his first rug. So Michael, wherever you are, unbelievable, unbelievable. It looks like an old world tapestry, she said. Great job indeed. So British writer, poet, textile designer, and social activist, William Morris. He studied classics at Oxford. He was no dummy. He was greatly influenced by his visits to Iceland, right? That was like a place of his heart. He produced a lot of English translations of Icelandic sagas. So interesting. He was a translator more than he was a writer. And he's associated with which of the following art movements? Is it A, Jugendstil, B, Fauvism, or C, arts and crafts? What do you think? The answer is C, arts and crafts. He really is, like, if not the founder, I think he is the artist who is most associated with the arts and crafts movement. But any of those guesses are fantastic and intelligent, but certainly C is the right answer. So if you got that, another point for you. Good job. Moving on to 18, which is this great image of this cow. Look at this guy. Now look at how tricky this is. All the different parts of the cow really represent different things. This is a rug that was hooked by this is on Green Mountain Rugs website for a rug show in, again, 2020 called Hooked in the Mountains. This rug was hooked as a challenge rug. The Green Mountain Hooked Rugs organization asked people to hook a Vermont cow pattern for display at the Sauter Village Rug Show. So everybody came up with different ones. It says the Champlain Islands fiber bees all took turns hooking this particular rug, and it showcases all of Vermont and the Champlain Islands, like Lake Champlain. And it says, look closely for bees, apple trees, an ice cream cone, Bernie Sanders, a honeycomb, round bales of hay, a farm, a sailboat, fish, skiing, snowman, and a lot more. And of course, times have changed and the Sauter show was canceled. So you get to enjoy the cow virtually. That's a bit rough, huh? So about the artists, the Champlain Fiber Bees is a large group of fiber artists around the state of Vermont who gather weekly in the Champlain Islands, oh heaven, to socialize, share, and create. One interesting thing about Ben & Jerry's, I have to add, Ben & Jerry's gives, as a company, the ice cream company, gives their ice cream waste to local Vermont farmers to use to feed their hogs. So a lot of hogs around Vermont are eating Ben & Jerry's ice cream, and apparently they seem to like it. No surprise there, right? They like all the flavors except mint Oreo. Now, this is your question for Vermont. My page is scrolling like crazy times. Let me come back here. Which of these writers, okay, who lived in Vermont in the 1890s and invented, it's a writer, invented the game of snow golf? And did this by painting a golf ball red, hitting it, regular golf, into the snow, and then being able to find it because it was colored red. Is it A, Rudyard Kipling, B, Mark Twain, or C, F. Scott Fitzgerald? So this revolves around, do you know which of these three writers lived in Vermont? And if you do, then you know the answer, because only one did. And the answer is Rudyard Kipling. So let's see, which one was that? A. So the answer is A, Rudyard Kipling. Interesting, huh? Snow golf. For some people, you still have snow on the ground. You could give it a whack, literally. Now, check this one out. This is number 19. Look at this beautiful image, this beautiful rug. It's a dead link. It's one of these Pinterest dead links, but you can see it's signed, I think, J-U-B. If anybody knows J-U-B, give them a tag so we know. 2016. Gorgeous seashells. I just could not pass this one up. Seashells can be plain or smooth. If you think about clamshells, those are smooth. But they often have a lot of spikes and ridges and protrusions kind of sticking up. And it's for a reason. The elaborate shapes of shells that you find in the tropics, it's for protection, right? Because the thing living inside the shell is subject to a lot of predators. So that's why some shells have tons of spikes and ridges and stuff. But those shells tend to be more in the tropics where there are more predators. Like for example, where I am around New England, you get a lot of the clam shells, oyster shells, smooth shells, because there really aren't a lot of predators. Seagulls are taking them out of the water, but you're not seeing other predators really in the water going after them. One of the oldest known shell collections of seashells, was found at Pompeii. We talked about this in our last trivia night. It was a collection that was preserved after the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, and consisted of shells that came from distant seas, certainly as far as the Red Sea, which at that time was like a world away. And they seem to have been kept for the simple reason that they looked pretty and people enjoyed looking at them. I found that bit of trivia from a book called Spirals in Time by Helen Scales. Really pretty, right? So the shell called the Conus gloriamaris is considered to be the rarest and possibly the most expensive seashell in the world. If you are a diver and you look for shells, you are probably aware of the Conus gloriamaris, but it is considered the most valuable and the most rare shell. Where is this shell found? A, the Philippines, B, Australia, or C, Portugal? What do you think? Could be any of those places, right? Just thought it was so interesting that somebody in Pompeii, in 70 anything AD, had a collection of seashells, that they would think something so simple was so beautiful enough to display. I mean, it's so sad, right? So sad. In any case, the answer, you have shells. Do you have a shell collection, Susan? They are so beautiful, and when you pick them up off the beach, they remind you of your travels and your trips. Good guess, Mom, but you're wrong. The answer is the Philippines. So hey, get your scuba gear, get a scuba gear ready, book a flight. It's going to be cheap. Get down there and look for the Conus gloriamaris. Big money, big money. It really is big money. It's like tens of thousands. So another one by Encompassing Designs. This is number 20. I really went on an Encompassing Designs tongue twister bender. Oh, you just bought some shells from A. How cool. Isn't that funny? What a coincidence. So this is Encompassing Designs. This was the school bus design is hooked by Ann Holmes. So I wrote the author Joanna Cole. Oh, okay. The author Joanna Cole wrote a series of books called The Magic School Bus. Do you remember these, or do you have kids or grandkids? My kids are not into these books, and I wish they were. It's a series of books about science in which a classroom of students goes on field trips on this magic school bus. It's just like a typical American, yellow school bus, and they go into impossible places like the human body, the solar system, the clouds, the past, like Egyptian pyramids, all kinds, Atlantis, all kinds of places. And they study things that specifically have to do with science. Now, if you know this series of books, do you know the name of the teacher in the Magic School Bus series? Janice, do you know? Is it A, Mrs. Frizzle, B, Mrs. Dazzle, or C, Mrs. Wuzzle? And the answer is A, Mrs. Frizzle. I made the other two up because they sounded right. And if you know the books, you already know that. But I'm really hoping to force these books on my children soon because they really seem so cool. It's a huge series too, so something to look up if you have little ones around you that you might enjoy learning about science. Sometimes you got to force a square peg in a circle hole. So good job, Kira, you got it. Robin, you got it. Now number 21, this is obviously a great Van Gogh. Mom, we had this in the house growing up. You had hope it was a print of this. I was going to say a print of this. Hope it was a print of this because we don't have it anymore. So this is a beautiful Van Gogh. This is actually an adaptation of a Van Gogh by an artist called Bruce Bauden. And this is Van Gogh's painting called A Wheat Field with Cypresses. So this was hooked by Jerry Labowski, Rochester, New York, 2014. Now a little bit on Van Gogh because I want to keep things moving. So much to say about Van Gogh, right? I mean, he's like one of the most interesting and sad stories ever. Of course, we all know the Don McLean song. Van Gogh was one of the most famous and influential artists of his time. He struggled with obscurity, certainly during his very short life. He was born in the village of Groot-Zonder in Holland, March 1853. He was born into a religious upper-class family, and after doing a lot of traveling and a lot of unfulfilling jobs, he took up painting with no formal training. His landscapes, still lifes, portraits, sketches, all vibrant colors, unique subjective perspective on the world. This vision of his would revolutionize the world of art, but not in his lifetime. He fought depression, can identify with that one, and mental illness, can identify with that one, while creating an intense and arresting universe of images. Van Gogh was never a famous painter in his life, which is so sad, and he was constantly in a state of poverty. He sold one painting in his life, and it was the Red Vineyard, which he sold for 400 francs when he was in Belgium, and that was 7 months before his death, so not very good feedback in his lifetime. The happiest time of his life was in 1873 when he traveled to Britain. He was working for an art dealer, and he loved being in London. He was employed by a dealer in The Hague, which is the capital of the Netherlands, and it was the happiest time of his life. He seems to have been having a love affair with his landlady's daughter, who was called Eugenie Lawyer, but she apparently rebuffed his romantic advances, so that didn't go well either. Nothing really went well for him, right? From November 1881 to July 1890, Van Gogh produced a series, close to 900 paintings, which is rather astonishing. At the age of, oh, wait a minute, I'm going the wrong way. Hang on, hang with me. At the age of, it's going to be young because he died so young. At the age of, I'm sorry, I'm working with my Word document here. Dear, oh dear, 27. He abandoned his unsuccessful career as an art dealer and a missionary, and he concentrated on painting and drawing. He used a lot of peasants and farmers as models because he could not afford to pay a model to come into his studio and sit for him. His most famous work was done while he was in an insane asylum. Starry Night is arguably his most famous work, and that was done while he was sort of in a home for care. He voluntarily admitted himself when he had a nervous breakdown in 1888. And which resulted from the ear cutting incident. And incidentally, it was his ear lobe that he cut off, not his whole ear. He just cut off, I'm not minimizing it or normalizing it, but he cut off part of his ear lobe. The painting depicts a view of his bedroom. I'm pretty sure you can picture that with kind of straw-colored floor. It's been part of the Metropolitan Collection since 1941. He died at the age of 37 in 1890. He shot himself in the chest, and there were no witnesses, and the gun was never found. He committed the act in a wheat field, where he had been painting a barn. He was able to stagger to an auberge in Auvers where he was staying, and 2 doctors tended to him, but the bullet could not be removed because there was no surgeon available, and he died on July 29th from an infection. His brother Theo later wrote to his sister Elizabeth in his last letter, which he wrote to Theo. He said that I do try to do as well as certain painters whom I have greatly loved and admired. So in other words, he was trying to sort of base his work and model his work on the work of other people, contemporaries of him who he loved and admired. This is just awful. I'm not going to go into the rest because it's going to make me cry, but it's the story of a tortured person who struggled with mental health and died at a young age because he just didn't have any more hope. So super, super sad. But at one point in his life, he lived with another painter who also was quite famous. Do you know who Van Gogh's roommate was? Was it A, Paul Gauguin, B, Georges Seurat, or C, Henri Toulouse-Lautrec? If you know his story, you probably know this one. So sad. You know, there's a new exhibit, kind of an installation going around, a virtual Van Gogh. I know, so sad, right, Robin? It's like an all sensory thing, and I think it's like in Minnesota right now. My sister told me where it was. It's not on the East Coast, but it's coming. So I'm going to keep my eye out for that because people are buying tickets for it already. I would love to see that. I've been to the Van Gogh Museum, of course, in Amsterdam. I was a bit underwhelmed by it, I have to say. So I would love to try this other experience, or I'd just love to go to the places that he went. But the answer is Paul Gauguin. That was his roommate for a while and a friend of his. Of course, nobody can help you when you feel the way that you feel. Nobody can get inside your head and make you feel any better. When there's no hope, there's no hope. It's just the way that it is. But he was surrounded by contemporaries who believed in him, but unfortunately the public did not believe in him and did not financially support his work, which did not give him a lot of promise for the future. So moving out of that very sad state to number 22. We've got to go. We've got to zip. Antique Chicks. This is one of the ones that I put up on Ribbon Candy. Oh, coming to Boston soon. Good one, Kira. I'll check it out there. That's an easy drive. Antique Chicks. This I found on a site called NantucketAntiquesDepot.com. I think it was for sale in the past for something in the thousands, but I put this as a pattern because it's a copyright-free image on ribboncandyhooking.com if you like it. I think I called it Flying Geese and Peeps for obvious reasons. There's flying geese quilt design in the middle, but the peeps on the side. So it's a folk art rug with chickens, circa 1880. And what I want to talk about here is peeps because we're coming up to Easter. I got this info from the website called Food and Wine. Peeps. Now this is just an interesting story I'm going to rattle off because I read deep into this. It was like a rabbit's warren for me reading about peeps. In 1910, a 19-year-old Russian Jewish immigrant called Sam Bourne landed in New York ready to start a new life in America. This is going to be a great immigrant story here. Escaping from the rising tide of anti-Semitism and grumblings of revolution that would happen 7 years later, so he got out just in time. Bourne quickly got to work in the U.S., doing what his family in Europe did, which was making chocolate. In only a few years, he was an innovator in this field, and according to the Candy Hall of Fame, who has recorded his life very deeply, he invented the stick inserting machine for lollipops, and he called it the Bourne Sucker Machine. I'm not sure that that was the best name for it, but it's what he named it. He's also credited with inventing the sprinkles, like for ice cream, and Eskimo pies, the filling for Eskimo pies. He did so much with candy and confectionery in his lifetime. During the 1920s and 30s, the company grew hugely by buying other companies around it. He did really well for himself in a short time. And making these acquisitions, of course, helped the company grow. They ended up moving to Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and their company was called Just Bourne, which is kind of a modern name for it, but his last name was Bourne. Now, there was another company already in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and they were a new company struggling with legal battles over who came up with which candy first, not with Bourne, but with people who were already in Pennsylvania, local candy companies there. It was called the Rhoda Company, R-O-D-D-A, and they were really in trouble when the Bourne Company moved in. They were already in trouble with a lot of legal battles, but they started to appeal to, in other words, tried to sell to local people, meaning the Anabaptist groups, the groups of Mennonites, the Amish, those communities, tried to create Easter candies. At Easter, they were about to go bankrupt. They tried to create Easter candies, including bunnies, jelly eggs, holy crosses, that kind of thing, that would appeal to the local community. And they did well. They saved themselves. They were working with what was called the marshmallow plant, which is the Althea officinalis. Let's see if that's a Latin name for it, but it's called the marshmallow plant. So they were working with marshmallow. And they started creating Peeps. They first started, nobody knows when they started. The family has no documentation of when they started, but it's believed the very early 1940s. They started making them as more of a decorative item made of marshmallow than to eat. And again, not documented, so that's tricky. But making Peeps was super labor intensive. And it took as many as 80 people during the short Easter season to make enough for like a very, very limited edition run. Made with marshmallow, whipped egg, egg whites, lots of sugar. They would use a fluted steel-tipped kind of tool, like a cake decorating tool, which squirted the mixture into the shape of baby chicks, like a little mold or a little cookie cutter thing. And they were left to air dry. It took upwards of 27 hours to get like a tray of Peeps done. So very labor intensive. Now, at that point, right around that time, Roscoe Rotter, who founded that company, died, and the Jewish immigrant, Sam Bourne, bought the company. So in the 1940s, his son or grandson, Bob Bourne, took over and invented a machine called the depositor. Weird name, right? But it actually sped up the production of Peeps. And with the depositor was in use until like the last few years when they got something even more state-of-the-art. It worked really, really well. And the grandson, Sam, said it's so sad that they stopped using this historic machine because it served them for almost 100 years making Peeps, but now they can make Peeps even faster using this new thing. So all this newfangled stuff creeping into our lives, right? Oh, I cut off my question to you by accident. It was about Peeps, right? Because there's all kinds of cookbooks now and celebrity chefs do recipes on TV with Peeps. I'm going to try to ad-lib my question to you because I cut it off of my document by accident. What color of Peeps is not a color of Peeps? Is it, I don't know what letters I chose, let's say blue, white, purple. That was a baddie. I did a baddie. But let's see if we can recover. Do you think it was blue, white, or purple that Peeps do not come in? Because marshmallow Peeps, of course, are still made to this day. And the answer is white. There are no white Peeps. They're all colored. Blue is there, purple is there, pink, yellow, everything, even like a spring green, but not white. On to the next, number 23. Now this is a beautiful, this is another one of these rugs that's like mass manufactured. This is from maincottage.com. It's called the Paint Chip Pastel Micro Hooked Wool Rug. Good job, everybody. You all got me on that one. No white Peeps. This rug actually, although it is like manufactured by a machine in a hooked rug style of paint chips, it goes between, the smallest one is 120 and it goes up to 2,700. So, you know, these rugs are not handmade, but they are not cheap either. Beautiful thing. Now, this question is going to be about paint because this is a paint chip rug. Paint is one of the earliest inventions of humanity, and some cave paintings are drawn with red and yellow ochre. Unbelievable, right? Made as long ago as 40,000 years ago. I mean, this is extraordinary. And paint might be even older than 40,000 years ago because in 2003, South African archaeologists reported finds in Blombus Cave of seeing cave paintings done with paint that were 100,000 years old. That is extraordinary, using pigments from nature. I mean, that's what paint is, isn't it? So what is the difference between pigments and dyes? Now, this is something we're going to talk about with my sister in the coming weeks. We've been talking a lot about doing some shows for Ribbon Candy Hooking where I can take you to Yale, where she works on art restoration, very famous paintings. But she knows a lot about dyes and pigments, and we can cross those over to our dyeing adventures. So we're going to be doing a lot of that in the future. What is the difference between pigments and dyes? Well, dyes, it boils down to mud versus sugar water. So if you scoop up a cup full of muddy water from a puddle, it's colored brown. And there's silt in it, and there's dirt in it, and there's particles of mud in it. And given enough time, if you put it down, the particles will sink and the water will be clear, but the mud will sink to the bottom. Okay, so that is one of the options. However, if you mix a spoonful of sugar into a cup of water, the sugar will completely dissolve in the water and change the color of the water. So it will not sink to the bottom. It will mix with the water. So this is basically the difference between pigment and dye. So when we are dyeing with something that is more like sugar water than mud, than like a pigment like clay. It's not going to separate. It's going to mix, and it's going to stay mixed. I thought that was interesting. Anyway, this is a question for you about pigment. So if you are an art historian, you might know this. What is thought to be the most expensive paint pigment ever? Is it A, Tyrian purple? Is it B, lapis lazuli? Or is it C, mummy brown? Now I'm going to keep going because time is marching on. And I got this answer from this fantastic website called hyperallergic.com, The Colorful Stories of 5 Obsolete Art Pigments by Alison Meyer. And the answer is lapis lazuli. So it is widely believed to be the most expensive pigment ever, more pricey even than its weight in gold. Was made by grinding lapis, right, the precious stone. It goes back to the 6th century in Afghanistan. Its popularity really took off with Renaissance patrons who were painting blue robes on Mary and Jesus in religious paintings. And it was a color that they then called ultramarine. But this is the base for the color. It largely disappeared after that because people were not, the quarries were empty of the stone. They over sort of harvested the stone, for lack of a better word, and they just couldn't get it anymore. But you can still actually buy it at a place called Kremer, Kremer Pigments. It's a store in Manhattan for $365 for 5 grams. So if you are a die-hard painter, that's where you get it. Tyrian purple, on the other hand, it was a very prized, prestigious kind of a pigment from the ancient world, and it was actually used from a rather slimy source, a predatory snail. It got its name from a shellfish with a snail body. It's a pigment that lived off the shore of Phoenicia's Tyre, Tyre, according to the Pigment Compendium. This is a color we no longer have. Not only was it a royal color, of course, purple is a royal color, Extremely, extremely rare to find it exposed to the sun, the elements. You'd need a lot. It was made from the mucus of the snail, so you would need a ton of these snails to get this color purple. And again, it was a problem of supply and demand. It's just too hard. It's too hard of a chase for that color of purple. And the last one was Mummy Brown. You know we have this in Cushing. I just used Mummy Brown this morning at 5 in the morning. I got this from it's a Twitter tip from Art versus Artifact. It's a vanished pigment that actually has an incredible story. The reason it's called Mummy Brown is because it was a shade that was favored by pre-Raphaelites, and it was actually mummies that made this pigment. In other words, you would get a mummy, most often a cat, sometimes a human or a part of a human, grind it up with white pitch and myrrh, and it had this fleshy brown color, and people would use it to paint pre-Raphaelite paintings. And this is true. They would use mummies to make Mummy Brown. I'm not kidding. It's well documented. According to a 1964 Time magazine story, the Mummy Brown pigment didn't last due to a shortage of its name-defining ingredient. The managing director at this London-based company that spoke to the magazine said, "We might have a few odd limbs hanging around somewhere, but not enough to make any more paint." So truly, Mummy Brown is made from mummies. Crazy but true stories. Now here comes another one, number 24. This is a cookie cutter picture. Again, one of these great easy compositions. I put this one into ribbon candy hooking. Cookie cutter shapes. This is real reminiscent of sort of Magdalena Ebby Briner. Not a scatter pattern, very structured pattern, but very, very easy, real early antique design, 19th century design for sure. And anybody could do this. People would make designs like this. Edward Sands Frost did not cover the universe, right? He covered a limited area, and so did his reach. But people in remote areas would often use cookie cutters and I've done videos on this on ribbon candy hooking, to make designs for rug hooking. Patterning, repeating, multiples of anything is always strong, but this question is going to be about cookie cutters because that is almost certainly a cookie cutter design with the two birds facing each other. So cookie cutters were not invented by any one person. They've evolved over the years. Oh, Carol, we'll see you soon. You love the birds, butting heads. Yeah, me too. Good old folky design. The cookie cutter can be dated back to before 2000 BC. So it's hard to say whether the Egyptians are the first. They're almost always the first. Lots of people in early civilizations were using cookie cutters as baking molds. So that makes a lot of sense. And certainly people were in the early days of America when people would be rug hooking. Now, interesting facts about cookies. Are we pigs or not as Americans? Americans consume over 2 billion cookies a year, which is over 300 cookies per person. I have to admit that sounds about right. Which means that the average American in his or her lifetime eats 35,000 cookies. That sounds a little bit on the low side, actually. 95.2% of U.S. households eat cookies, right? We're not all healthy eaters. Some of us are pigs, like me. But this is the interesting thing. Half of the cookies baked in American homes each year are what flavor? A, oatmeal raisin, B, chocolate chip, or C, shortbread? And the answer is chocolate chip, of course, because why mess around, really? If you got that right, another point for you. How are you doing? Let me know what your point score is. Let me know what the tally is. Let's move on to this one. This is, I think, is a beautiful summary image by Carolyn Stitch. This is also on Honey Beehive, the website, Honey Beehive. It's called Jump. Isn't that great? Doesn't that make you just feel it? Feel the summer coming on. You know, it's going to be warm enough one of these days. It's going to be warm enough again for you to jump into the water like that with an inner tube. I got this information from the Smithsonian.com webpage. They have a travel page. Oh, you're giving me interesting facts about biscotti. Calls for butter but no sugar. Ooh, that's a good one because I do love biscotti. It's a good melter in the coffee, isn't it, in the tea? So Smithsonian has this great article about the history of summer resorts and the history of the American vacation. Because if you think about it, in the early days of America, and Canada too, people were very busy setting up towns and communities, and people did not take vacations. You worked 6 days a week. You worked on Saturday too, Monday to Saturday, and you were in church all day on Sunday. So there was no such thing as a vacation. In the history of America, at least, American travel is defined by an event that hardly anybody knows about in the spring of 1869. A handsome young preacher from Boston named William Murray published one of the first guidebooks. And it was a guidebook to the wilderness of the Adirondack Mountains, harking back to one of our earlier themes. He talked about a 9,000 square mile expanse of lakes, forests, and rivers in upstate New York. Now, what was so interesting about this publication was not that he was handsome, that's just a nice side note, but the idea of going into the wilderness was outrageous at this point. You would go there to settle, to set up a home, to sort of civilize the area around you, tend to garden, make a space for yourself to live. But you would not go there for funsies because it was dangerous. It was considered quite dangerous. So him putting out this guidebook was a bit of a game changer for people at that time. It made people think, could it indeed be fun to go into the wilderness and have a vacation, get out of a city area? Because the further you go into the 19th century, the closer and deeper you get into the American Industrial Revolution, where we're talking about building city centers that are smoggy, filthy, smoky, densely populated, and miserable. And for health reasons, because everybody had some kind of health complaint, you would want to get out of the city center and get somewhere where the air was better for you. That it was known that the air could be better for you by the ocean or in the woods. So these early guidebooks are really interesting as sort of keystones in the history of the American vacation, American history in general. So of course, rich people took vacations. Of course they did, particularly the women. The men were working in the city, but the women were out. And they would take like ferries, luxury ferries and trains. But of course, poor people would make their way with horses or stagecoaches or like not first class trains. So the idea of a vacation is a 19th century invention. It did not happen earlier than that. It certainly didn't. People were just too busy. So which of the following, in terms of being historical, which of the following is not a historical summer resort, meaning an 19th or 20th century resort? Which of the following is not one of the early American resorts? I'm sorry, Canadians, because this will be tricky. Is it A, Cape Cod, B, Jekyll Island, South Carolina, or C, Cape May? And I am running so late, I can't believe it. But the answer is Cape Cod. Cape Cod was not one of these sort of social elite places to socialize. Cape Cod was a blue-collar working area, and to a huge extent it still is. But Jekyll Island was full of prestige and rich people, and of course Cape May, New Jersey was too. When you think of where those Gilded Age mansions are, that's where the rich people were, and that's where the vacations happened. So Cape Cod was not one of those. There's not any of that on the Cape. That's what I like about it. It's so quiet. So let's look at this one next, zipping along to number 26. This is 5 Salty Dogs, again, by Encompassing Designs. Look at their website. I'm telling you, you're going to flip your flipper. This was hooked by Don Taylor. Now, I want to talk about with this design, 1991, a sturdy, bright green, freshly painted fishing vessel left Gloucester, Massachusetts, bound for Newfoundland. It had 6 men on board, and it hit a storm that was later called the perfect storm. And all lives were lost. The storm was also at that time called the no-name storm because it wasn't predicted, and the Halloween storm because it was, I think, on October 28th, a few days before Halloween. It was actually a hurricane caliber storm that kicked up. And by the reason they call it a perfect storm is but just the circumstances. Low pressure, they hit a low pressure area. Just the circumstances, the tide hit a high point. The boat was going up and down. And it was the perfect storm of bad things happened. And they hit winds that they believed to be 75 miles an hour. Of course, they lost, if you saw the movie or read the book, they lost contact, so they really don't know what happened. One of the saddest things about it is the oldest man on the boat was 37 years old, the captain, Billy Tyne. Just one of these horrible, sad chapters of American history, but I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the story. Great reason to go to Gloucester, Mass, because it's a beautiful town. What was the name of this boat? Was it A, the Hannah Bowden, B, the Andrea Gale, or C, the Edmund Fitzgerald? And the answer is the Andrea Gale. So the Hannah Bowden, if that sounds familiar, is the sister ship to the Andrea Gale. And you Canadians, I know you must know, because you must love Gordon Lightfoot as much as I do, because I love him so much. He's right up there with Barry Manilow for me. He wrote that beautiful song, The Edmund Fitzgerald. True story, 29 crew members who perished that night. It was the biggest ship on the Great Lakes at the time. 17-year run it had. It was a very solid ship. Nobody thought anything could be wrong. En route to a steel mill near Detroit from Superior, Wisconsin, the freighter encountered another winter storm. Became hurricane force storm, 35-foot waves. Boat already had a bad list, but the radars broke. The water started engulfing the deck. It sank 15 miles from Whitefish Bay. No distress signals were sent, and the last thing they heard was from Captain Ernest McSorley, who planned to retire shortly after, at the end of the season. He said, "We are holding our own." How sad is that? That makes me all, I'm thinking of the song too, which is such a sad song. That's one of the few songs. It's a very long song. It's one of these narrative story songs. I always listen to it the whole way through because it's so sad. The part about it was nice knowing you, and oh, I'm going to choke myself up. But the correct answer for Gloucester was the perfect storm boat is the Andrea Gale. So that was B. Good job if you got that right. Let's move on quickly to number 27. This is from a blog site called, come on you, called www.craftsofcharacter.com, and this is by Ann Kirby, and it's called Lord's Cove. And this is people snowshoeing outside this beautiful little village. I just think this is just a gorgeous, gorgeous rug. Ann was born and continues to live in the outport fishing community of Lord's Cove in the Burren Peninsula. Ann's desire to hook rugs was rekindled when she retired from the family grocery business after 26 years. There's a great biography on her. She's self-taught on this website that I just mentioned. This beautiful rug that she did shows this group of friends snowshoeing. So this question is going to be about snowshoeing. This is one of our few sports questions tonight. Snowshoeing is a form of hiking, of course, and of course important years ago, particularly for like trappers and traders who had to move over snow. So the first evidence of snowshoes dates to 3700 and 3800 BC. In what country is there evidence of snowshoes dating back to 3800 BC? Is it A, Switzerland, B, Austria, or C, Italy? This is a tricky one. I have to say this is a tricky one. The reason I included it was because it's a tricky one. Because the answer is C, Italy. It's so easy to forget that the Alps, the Dolomites, part of the Alps, the Italian part of the Alp range is in Italy, right? We always think of it as being in Austria, but it's in Italy. So the first snowshoes were found in Italy, but not the sunny part, the snowy part up in the Alps. So if you guess letter C, great job. That was a super sneaky one. Now moving on to 28, this is an image of a covered bridge. This is a beautiful rug. This is currently on eBay if you have $2,867.50. A rare early 20th century American folk art wool rug, currently on eBay. I have to say, I'm not sure that it's worth that. I'm not sure because I'm not sure that this is not a commercial pattern. But I liked this rug because it showed a covered bridge. And when I used to have my touring days back before the kids, I used to do a lot on the history of covered bridges because we went through all 6 New England states. And I would always talk to people on the bus about the history of covered bridges and how the main reason that they were created was obviously to bridge gaps so people could travel and cross. But they originally had doors on both sides so that if you were a traveler on your horse and it was frigid, freezing cold, deathly dead cold, you could go inside the bridge, close both doors, and sleep the night in there, and probably with your animal and survive. It would be warm enough that you could survive and be sheltered. So they originally had doors. They became a problem in the snow because, of course, because of the roof, they were covered. You couldn't go through them and use them for transportation to cross. So what they would do is a process called rolling out snow, where they would pack the floor of the covered bridge with snow so your sled could continue right through the covered bridge, which I think is also super interesting. They would make snow in the covered bridge because you would be traveling on something with sled rails on it. Interesting, right? So many stories of I'm just looking, I grew up in Eastern Connecticut, Susan. So many covered bridges in Connecticut, right? There's so many stories of bridges detaching from their sort of grounding and traveling up on a high river when the river floods and getting away that way. So many bridges lost over time. But which state in the United States, again, I'm sorry, Canadians, do you think has the most covered bridges? Is it A, Pennsylvania, B, Vermont, or C, Iowa? And I tried to trick you here too. Oh, Indiana and Wisconsin have a lot of covered bridges. Don't give me any more places to go to. Just don't, because I want to go to both of those places so badly, and I would love to see those covered bridges. I would love to. No, Vermont. So the answer actually is Pennsylvania. This got me too. For someone that did commentary on covered bridges, 219 existing covered bridges in Pennsylvania. Vermont has 106. I put Iowa because remember that movie, Bridges of Madison County? Um, there's only 19 in Iowa, but I thought that might get you. And there's only 6 actually remaining, so there's really 6 in Iowa. But I thought that might get you. I thought that was a sneaky deaky. So let's go on to this one of the Blue Church. I think next trivia night we're going to do even less so we can talk more. The Blue Church, this was posted in Rug Hooking Daily. You know that great blog spot? You should subscribe to that if you don't. September 2012 by Loretta Moore, Moore. It's a beautiful blue church. I have not seen a blue church in my life. I do not question it. I just want to go. I would like to know where this is. Now, why do churches have steeples? Is this a question? You know, I'm always careful when I talk about religion because, you know, I try to be a good person and careful and respectful. Why do churches have steeples, and do all churches have steeples? They do not. So it's partly aesthetic, the reason for steeples. You know, they enhance the look of the building. They do a lot of things. If you think of the prototype of a church taken from European settlers, churches and cathedrals, they're like larger cousin. You know, the reason they have a steeple is because you can see them from a distance. And if you're traveling, which people always were, you could see a steeple in the distance and you know where there's a church, that there's a community and there's a town center. So you would go toward it. So it was helpful to have it, but they also house the belfry where the bells are. And of course, that also sounds the alert to let you know that there's a church there and that it's time for the service. And it's your early clock if you don't have a clock, which you probably don't in the early days. So lots of reasons why there would be churches, but not every type of congregation has a church. Which kind of denomination, typically, now there's always going to be exceptions because people move, like they move house, people go from church to church, you know, congregations move from church to church. But which denomination historically does not have a church with a steeple? A Baptist church, a Quaker church or meeting house, or a Roman Catholic church? Now this one you're probably going to get. This was hard to do. I almost put in Unitarian church because we are Unitarians. But I really couldn't because some Unitarian churches that I've been to, when I used to tour, I would typically go to church on Sunday if I could, at whatever the church was local. And many Unitarian churches have steeples, but many do not. So that was a tricky one and I left it out. Baptist churches do. Because Baptists are Protestants. It's a form of Christianity. It's distinguished by baptizing somebody after they are old enough to decide they want to be part of the faith. So it's a Christian religion and they have a steeple on their churches. Roman Catholics also have steeples on their churches. Most traditionally, again, Christian churches have steeples. That's the difference. If you're a Roman Catholic, you believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ, the Son of God, et cetera, redemption from sins. It's a Christian religion and there's going to be a steeple on your church. But if you are a Quaker, you are what is called an Anabaptist. And I use this in the first cocktail time of January, and I use this a couple times tonight. They are still Christians. It's a Christian movement, but it traces its origins to the radical reform. So anti-Martin Luther. These are communities of people who include, for example, Mennonites, Amish, and Quakers, who live rather parallel and separately to the rest of the modern world. They choose over church doctrine, meaning documents. They choose lifestyle. So they live a certain way, and that's how they demonstrate and celebrate their religion, as opposed to talking about it. So they use meeting houses, and they do not have churches with steeples. So interesting bit of trivia, just in case you know nothing on the subject. I just thought it was worth reviewing, and that was a beautiful blue church in that rug. So let's zip forward to the Friendship Sloop. I just discovered this artist. She's called Melinda White. melindawhite.com. She's got a beautiful website. This is called Friendship Sloop with Beach Stones. Check out this border. Check out this border. Coral. It looks like a, what is this thing called? The thing in the middle with the circle thing. I want to say sundial. Sanddial? Is that it? God, why am I blanking out on that? Why am I blanking out on that? Anyway, Friendship Sloop and Beach Stones, Melinda White. She has a beautiful, beautiful website. Please check her out after this show. Be a doer. I like that, Susan. So Seal Harbor, Maine. She's from Seal Harbor, Maine. Melinda White. Her company, Seal Harbor Rug. It's called Seal Harbor Rug Company. Distinctive voice in the art scene in Mount Desert Island, Maine. Beautiful scenic island that's been the inspiration for artists over 2 centuries, including Frederick Church, Childe Hassam. Fitzhugh Lane, lots of beautiful American artists. Melinda comes from a long lineage of artists who are out in that part of Maine. She dyes her own wool, and she uses a punch hook instead of paints to make her visions of the places that are local to her. So you've really got Melinda White. You've got to check her website out. She is just a glorious, very, very, very heavy on local landscapes, and very Maine heavy, which is one of my favorite places. So this rug features a sloop, which is a kind of a boat. It's a one-masted sailboat. Now, for those of you boat people out there, which of these is not a real boat? I made up one. Which one is the one that I made up? Is it A, a pirogue, B, a duo hull, or C, a trimaran? This is so hard. I mean, maybe you belong to the yacht club and this is not hard at all, but for me this was like, whew. Coming up with a name was hard. Okay, so the right answer is B. I made up duo hull. And the reason I made duo hull up is because there's a boat called a mono hull. So I thought surely they might fall for duo hull, right? A is a wrong answer because a pirogue is a hollowed out canoe. It comes from a French word. Pirogue is a French word, but it's that boat that you associate with Egypt that's like hollowed out and has a square sail. That's a pirogue. You got entranced by the cloud. Oh, that is so nice. The cloud does have a strange shape. It's strange in a wonderful way. It's like it's a Joni Mitchell way. I've looked at clouds that way, right? Angel hair. It really does. It looks like there's a swan up front there. My daughter Jocelyn could have a feast with this cloud, telling me all the crazy things it could be. So a pirogue is a real boat. A trimaran is a real boat. It's a multi-hull boat that is comprised of a main hull, if you're a boat person, two smaller outrigger hulls that are attached to the main hull with lateral beams. In other words, it's one of these boats that's in the water, and almost like a sidecar on a motorcycle, it has one on each side. That has got to be one of the great layman explanations for a trimaran, right? It's got two things on the side that float in the water too. And these are often used for racing, used as ferries, and sometimes as warships, incredibly, this kind of a boat. So the correct answer was duo hull. I made that one up. If you got that right, congratulations, you are good. Now, this is a beautiful rug, another Melinda White rug. I went crazy on her website, total flipped my flipper moments on her website. Beautiful lobster, right? You can click on all different things, seascapes or characters or lore or whatever. She's got all different categories. But again, look at this really unusual border. I mean, isn't that something, this border? It's not regular at all. And look at her choice of the yellow, which really complements the orangey color, right, in the blues. But that is so different. Wouldn't you expect a blue background with a lobster rug? No, you're getting a yellow one. Melinda White she's extraordinary. You have to check her out. So here comes a lobster question for you. I'm not going to do the typical lobster trivia about how they were like poor man's whatever back in the days of early America, where they used them as fertilizer, because I think most people know this. They use them as fertilizer. They're considered bugs, bugs of the sea. People would not eat them. They gave certain amounts to slaves, this kind of thing. None of this is actually proven, and none of this is recorded. So I don't like to repeat it, because as a tour guide, I was really careful not to say things that I could not absolutely verify. Those things are not verified at all. But what is true might be true, but not verified. What is true about lobsters is that they can be cannibals. So when food is scarce, they will eat each other. They will eat a smaller one of themselves, right? Back to the whale ship Essex. They can swim backwards as fast as they can swim forward. Now, how icky is that if you're in the water with them? They can move backwards like a centipede, right? As fast as they could move forward. Not many creatures can do that. They can grow to be 4 feet long and 40 pounds, so about 10 pounds per foot. This is not uncommon. It is uncommon around New England because they are over-harvested by fishermen, and they have historically been, ever since people realized that they're delicious. But they are a creature that keeps growing, and it molts its shell. So when it drops its shell, it already has another shell going, and it can grow, in theory, indefinitely, right? Because lobsters can live to be over 100 years old. So if you think about it and you do the math, if they were not caught, and they do become tougher as they get older, so you wouldn't really want them if one eluded the system somehow, which is unlikely, but they can grow to be enormous and quite old. And the oldest one, I remember from my touring days, I didn't write in my notes, was like 6 feet long, and it was like well over 100 pounds. And people were terrified by it. They thought it was a sea monster. So this was like in early America when people would not even think about eating it. And it would have been super tough anyway. So something that you might know about lobsters that's interesting about their anatomy, how many stomachs does a lobster have? Did you think it was one? Because we're doing like cow times now. It's not going to be one, is it? Or maybe it is one. A, 1, B, 2, or C, 3. I gave you a leg up on that one by accident. The answer is C. It's 3 stomachs. They do different things. Their stomach, just like a cow, their stomachs do different things, right? They have slightly different body parts than us. So whereas there used to be like, we have like different sets of intestines, long and short, and they have different body parts. That one of their stomachs has like teeth in it that do like the breaking up. So just a completely different body as one would expect. I missed that comment. Walmart used to sell lobsters. Is that what that said? Because I know they still sell worms. We go there to get them when we're going fishing. Julia Child. Did Julia Child have a lot to say about lobsters? I feel like I need to get into Julia Child again. Have you ever been to the Smithsonian and seen the exhibit on Julia Child? All her pegboard all over the place where she drew with a marker all of the shapes of her utensils in her kitchen. Just tons. She was surrounded by shapes, with all of these tools that she would grab at the right moment. Just thought she was such a cool person. So if you guessed 3, letter C, you were correct. Good job. And we are getting there. I'm going to push through the last ones real quickly. This is another one that I put up on ribboncandyhooking.com. This is the weather vane sampler. Just a random cat in the middle, and then they use the same weather vane design around the 4 edges. Oops, sorry, I grabbed the wrong one. I am so sorry. This is the next one, 32. So this is a Warren Kimball. This is available at Woolly Fox. Speaking of companies that carry a specific designer, Woolly Fox carries Warren Kimball. So he's one of the best-known living folk artists. He's been around for more than 50 years. He's an educator. He's an artist. He's an antiques collector. He's created this really sort of sophisticated style of folk art that leans real heavy on landscapes. Not complicated, but also not super country. So he's right in the middle there. This is completely him, his own style. He did a lot of landscapes. He did a lot of patriotic stuff, but landscapes are what he's known for. He paints what he sees around them. And where is he from? Is it A, Ohio, B, Pennsylvania, or C, Vermont? Warren Kimball. And again, Woolly Fox is a great website too. You should check out Woolly Fox. They've got beautiful stuff there too. All the Warren Kimballs. And the answer is C. He is from Vermont. So the landscapes you're seeing are Vermont landscapes. They could be any of the places I mentioned, but they're Vermont. So this is the cat that I put on Ribbon Candy Hooking. Please check if you're interested. This is an image from Skinner, the auctioneer, the Sotheby's, but it's Skinner's. No information on it other than, there's a book out on Kimball. I hope there's at least one book out. There's plenty of books out on people like, who's the guy that paints all the English country? Oh, come on. All the little country cottages and stuff. So famous. Nicholas. Now, it'll come to me. I hope there's something out on Kimball because I think he's even better. So I'm going to talk about weather vanes with this guy here, the Skinner image. And again, I put that one up for you if you're interested. Go ahead and shop. I love to get orders out. So this is a weather vane question. The central image is of a cat, which is fairly random because they used a repeat image of a weather vane around the edges. The first weather vanes were invented, this time not by the Egyptians, but by the Greeks. A Greek astronomer called Andronicus, probably heard of him, 48 BC. Of course, you need to know what direction the wind is coming from for all kinds of reasons, crops being one of them. Now, the weather vane story that I like the most, this goes again back to my touring days. Did you know that the very famous weather vane on the top of Faneuil Hall, properly pronounced Funnel Hall, in Boston is a grasshopper, and it is also the symbol of not only Boston but Sturbridge Village outside Boston. It's a beautiful, a copper hand-hammered, gold leaf-covered 38-pound weather vane, and to give it a perspective, its eye is a glass doorknob, like an actual glass doorknob. Did you know that at one point in our fairly recent history, there was a huge black market for historical objects, and the weather vane was stolen from the roof of Faneuil Hall. I wonder if you remember this story. This was really, really bad. The reason it was bad is that weather vane has been up there for so long that it witnessed the Boston Massacre, the Boston Tea Party, the American Revolution, of course the Boston Marathon bombing. But the fact that it was stolen at one point in recent history, I think, is I don't know, Susan. If you put Warren Kimball into eBay, you can check, but I think probably not. I think Woolly Fox is the best place to find the Warren Kimballs. I sometimes see them at antique stores. I just saw a pig recently, a Warren Kimball pig at an antique store. But this weather vane went missing, and it was truly a sad event because the story goes that every mayor of Boston is allowed to look inside the body of the grasshopper, which is a time capsule, and they can take one thing out if they want, and they can put one thing in. And this has been going on since the American Revolution, when the thing was put up there as a symbol of Boston. So it was a terrible thing when it went away. Do you know what year, if you remember the story, the grasshopper disappeared, the weather vane of the grasshopper disappeared from the symbol of Boston, Faneuil Hall? 1974, 1984, 1994. And because there's a delay and we're late, I'm going to tell you it was 1974. There was a huge black market for historical artifacts in the 70s. And it's awful, but it's true. It's absolutely true. It was stolen by a man who had previously in 1967 worked on the roof of Faneuil Hall. So he knew how to get up there, and he understood it well. He worked in this sort of attic in the roof. He took it, and I didn't write this in my notes, but when I used to tell the story touring, I remember I researched it pretty well, and what happened was he got pulled over for some kind of a minor traffic violation. And when they pulled him over, they realized he had crazy tickets from all over the place. All, nothing criminal, but just all expensive. And he said to the cop, could this get any better if I knew something about the grasshopper at Faneuil Hall? And the policeman said, it could. Do you know something about the grasshopper? And he actually had the grasshopper in his attic. He'd been up on the roof. He got it down. It got a few more dings in it, which it already had plenty. And they gave him a bit of a break on all of his tickets and things. But it was just a fluke. They would not have found it, and they would not have found him if it weren't for just pulling him over for some random violation. So that was 1974. If you guessed 1974, great job. I have another great weather vane story, but I don't think there's time to tell it. I'll have to tell you another time. Let's do number 34. Let's do these real quick. This is a beautiful moose. This is from philamuseum.com, which is the Philadelphia Museum, but their website is philamuseum.com. Unknown maker. This is a very old American antique rug. This is one of the rugs I put up for sale. If you like this design, I think this is incredible. Late 19th century design, certainly U.S. Now, interesting things about a moose, if you're interested in moose trivia, they eat in summer they eat 73 pounds. They browse, right? So they just snack on bushes all day. This is what I love too, snacking all day. 73 pounds of food in summer and 34 in winter. That's extraordinary. They basically eat all day. They use their antlers, which are actually called paddles. So rack or antler is okay, but for a moose it's called paddles. They don't really use them when fighting predators. They use them for mating and stuff, to have a nice, even, balanced set of antlers. You probably will get a good mate. And they go really far to find a mate. But they use their paddles. They will use them fighting if they must, but they don't want to, and they're not looking for it. They're looking for ladies, really. So moose are such interesting animals, and I have never seen one in New England. I'm so sorry to say. I've seen them often in Wyoming, around the Snake River and stuff, but I've never seen one in New England for the many times I've been way up north. Now, we were talking about collectives earlier with James Lipton. We were talking about collectives of birds. Do you know what the collective word for a group of moose is? What is a group of moose called? Is it A, a shrewdness, B, a herd, or C, a sleuth? And you're thinking, oh, I think I know. Is she trying to trick me? Or does she think I think that she's trying to trick me? Or does she think I think she thinks I'm trying? So make a good choice. And I will tell you the answer, I'm not trying to trick you, is actually B. It's exactly what it seems to be. It's a herd. Because a shrewdness is of apes, and a sleuth, sometimes called a sloth, is of bears. So the correct answer is B, a herd. Oh, Janice, you just saw moose tracks on your lake yesterday in the snow. How nice is that? See, you got to enjoy every season, no matter what, right? Okay, so we are coming up to the, I'm treating this as a swan. It might be a goose or a duck. I'm treating this as a swan. People have been asking for a beginner class, and I'm going to use this pattern with these colors as the totally different colors as a basis for a beginner class, and I'm going to announce it tomorrow. So this is on the ribbon candy hooking site, but if you are a beginner and you want to take a class with me, I'm going to put this up tomorrow, or you can just get it as a pattern or as a kit. Now, this is a swan question. The British crown, we always know that the swans are associated with the British crown since the 12th century. The crown has the right to the swans of England. Now, they were prized back in the day, you know, as a banquet food. They would serve them at banquets and they would eat them. Now, given that, people sometimes say, you know, is the queen, people repeat this and they shouldn't. Is only the royal family allowed to eat swans? Well, I suppose so, but people don't eat swans anymore, right? And are the royal family allowed to eat swans? Well, the queen cannot be accused of a crime, so she cannot be accused of eating a swan if she were to eat a swan, and she could probably pardon herself if she were to, but they don't. So this is something that goes back to the Elizabethan period, and the royal family does not eat swans. But they do, I guess, officially own the swans, but they would not eat the swans. This is an old-timey thing. Now, again, this is a name question. Adult male and female birds often have different names, as you know, but what is a male swan called? It's not called a swan. What is it called? Is it A, a pen, B, a corn, or C, a cob? And if you know your birds, Martha, is this one for you? No, not animals are not for you, right? Plants are for you. So the answer is going to be C, a cob. Because a pen is a female swan, and a baby swan is a cygnet, and corn is just a vegetable. So the answer is C, a cob. Good job. If you got it, you got yourself another point. Now, getting to our home stretch here, we are going a little bit late, but this is a beautiful Sotheby's image of rabbits. I'm thinking about Easter here, as you can imagine. You know, I'm thinking, no, let's just do it. So this is Easter. So this is some Sotheby's image. I put this one up also. This is an antique rug. I put this one up on ribbon candy hooking. In many pre-Christian societies, eggs have a lot of strong associations with spring and new life, of course. Being born again, in religion, Jesus' tomb opening. You know, it's a symbol of resurrection, an egg, in many cultures. So in the medieval period, eating eggs was forbidden during Lent. And during that 40-day period, which is before Easter, if you're not a celebrator of Lent. So Easter is known for a period of eating because you've been fasting previously to that. And egg hunts go back to like the 1200s. So even back then, Edward I purchased 450 eggs that were decorated by like people who worked for him and distributed around his household as gifts to everybody, not just family members, but the workers too. And the custom of the Easter egg hunt is actually German. So everybody thinks everything to do with commercialization and pigging out is American, but this is actually a German custom that could date back to the 16th century. That is what is suggested anyway, when the Protestant reformer Martin Luther organized egg hunts for his congregation. The men would hide the eggs for the women and the children to find. And this was a nod to the story of the resurrection and the empty tomb and all that stuff. So this goes back to Martin Luther. Now, Queen Victoria picked this up with a vengeance. So we know a lot of the American customs also lean heavily on the Victorian period. So she really enjoyed Easter egg hunts around Kensington Palace that were put on by her mother when she was a little girl. Her mother she was German born. She was a German duchess. She was the Duchess of Kent, but she was German born. So, of course, this idea of celebrating with Easter eggs is German, and her mother was German. So this was very strong in Princess and then Queen Victoria's house. So starting in the 1830s, they would have all kinds of first decorating the eggs and then hunting for the eggs. This is not a new thing. Victoria and Albert, her beloved husband, continued the German tradition all through their lives, starting on Thursday, Maundy Thursday. And they would put stuff out for their many kids, of course, and they would go hunting for the eggs and then eat they were hard-boiled Easter eggs. So long tradition of hunting for Easter eggs. But my question for you is about Fabergé eggs. If you can picture a Fabergé egg, you know that there's some money there. Now, the first Fabergé egg is called the hen egg, and it was commissioned by the Tsar Alexander III. So it was for the Empress Maria Feodorovna. Sorry. It was a hugely bejeweled imperial egg for the imperial family, of course, a very big deal. And it was the first in a series of eggs. There would be more than 50 jeweled official Fabergé eggs. Now, these eggs go for a lot of money, as you know. There's lots of replicas, but the hen egg is the first. The winter egg was bought in 1949. In 1949, it sold for almost $5,000 at auction. The price today is averaged at $5.5 million. So these Fabergé eggs are a big deal. Knowing, if you know your history, they were made for the Russian imperial family, what year did Fabergé eggs start being made, right? They're a hat tip to Easter and the decorated egg. What year did this all begin for Fabergé? Is it A, 1850, B, 1885, or C, 1910? And the answer is B, 1885. So if you got that one right, you are awesome. I already knew that. Good job. And I want to see your point score at the end of all this. 37, I'm whipping through the last three. This is called multicolor, so Spanish or French spelling. This is one of these rugs. It's from thrumming.net, and it's from an article called Every Rug Tells a Story. This is one of these rugs that was hooked in Guatemala, right? So this is a big thing. I'm going to be talking about this on Coffee Time this week, so I'm going to skip over the real text of it now because we're running so late. But these are rugs made from t-shirts, going along with our Judy Taylor segment this week. These are rugs made from t-shirts. Women in Guatemala are doing this like crazy right now. And there is a current book that is out that was written by Cheryl Conway Daly and Marianne Wise. And it is about these Guatemalan women and their rug creations that are just absolutely extraordinary. What is this rug called? I mentioned it on Coffee Time this week. I'm going to do the rug. I'm going to do the book this week. Is it called A, Rug Money, B, Market Rugs, or C, Alframba Market? Do you remember? Did you see that episode, and do you remember? And if you don't, we're going to do it this week anyway, and I'm going to tell you. This is a huge, big subject right now, and the answer is A, Rug Money. The book is called Rug Money. So it is on Amazon. It's in print right now. And again, we're going to be talking about it this week, possibly even Monday. So now this is a beautiful rug. Again, Encompassing Designs. It's called Encompassing Designs Cod Jig. It's hooked by Adina Clark. And you know what this reminded me of is a Shirley Temple song from 1936 called Codfish Ball. You know how I love charming words to songs. And this song has this lyric. I have this song. It plays in the car a lot. Next Friday night, you're all invited to dance from 8 to 5. All the fishes still alive are having a ball. It's some affair. They'll all be there from the herring to the whale. They'll turn out to shake a scale in Neptune's hall. Come along and follow me to the bottom of the sea. We'll join in a jamboree at the Codfish Ball. Lobsters dancing in a row. Shuffle off to Buffalo. Jellyfish sway to and fro at the Codfish Ball. What movie is that song from? It's obviously a Shirley Temple movie. I gave you the year 1936. Is it A, The Little Princess, B, Bright Eyes, or C, Captain January? Do you know your Shirley Temple? I only know it because I love this song. The answer is C, Captain January. Such a cute song. If you don't know this song, Google it. Put it into YouTube. It is so cute. This is another beautiful antique rug. We're on our last two here. This is from the site called Live Auctioneers. This only sold for $100. Doesn't that give you stomach cramps? Don't cry yourself to sleep. There'll be more out there. But this is an early 20th century rug. This reminded me of great guessing. I love the different guesses. That makes me real happy. It makes me feel like I came up with some good red herrings. This reminds me of the story Henny Penny. You know the children's story about the sky falling? It was a moralistic kind of fable story about what happens when you incite panic in people. I'm not turning it into a political metaphor or anything like that. But when you incite panic, bad things that can happen. So this is an iconic story that dates back, dates back to the 19th century. But Flora Annie Steele wrote the book Henny Penny for American audiences in 1922, and it was illustrated by the famous illustrator Arthur Rackham. And it's about the story of the chickens believing, Henny Penny particularly believing that the sky is falling because she's told so. And as a result, all the chickens run into the woods. And in the woods, the fox, of course, is waiting for them because he generated this horrible story. And he eats them all. So typical Grimm style children's, it's not a Grimm's story. But it's a story that I think most of us know, and certainly kids know. So the chickens believe the sky is falling. There's more characters in the story than just chickens. Which of these characters did I make up? Which of these characters is not in the story Henny Penny? Is it A, Turkey Lurkey? Is it B, Piggy Wiggy? Or is it C, Goosey Poosey? I'm laughing because I'm thinking of the great song from the musical Promises, Promises, where it's turkey lurkey time. I'm going to stop. But I love that song, and it's super silly. And it also mentions Goosey Poosey. So the answer is not turkey lurkey or Goosey Poosey. The one I made up is Piggy Wiggy. I made that one up. So if you guessed B, Piggy Wiggy, that is the correct answer. You have yet another point. Good job. And this is our last rug of the night. This was on Worth Point, which is like an eBay, but I think Worth Point is just a version of eBay where people put stuff up for way too much money because they are delusional. But this is a commercial pattern. I actually have this pattern behind me. I'm going to show you mine too. It's bunnies on a seesaw. I do not know whose pattern this is. I've only seen it twice. This is one, and the one behind me is the other one. And this is another musical theater question for you. Not musical theater, sorry, musical. Which musical artist or group, right, which musical act recorded a song that was called, now I'm going to say this and it's going to sound dirty, but I just got that after the fact, Ride My Seesaw in 1968. Is it A, the Moody Blues, B, Jefferson Airplane, or C, the Yardbirds? Last question of the night. I wonder if you know the song. I had to look it up to make sure that it wasn't super dirty. It didn't seem to be. It seemed to be quite sort of literal. Just a strange name. And the answer is A, the Moody Blues. In 1968, came out with a song called Ride My Seesaw. This is my bunny rug. And this is going to go, I like it, I just don't need it. I bought this impulsively, and I love it, but I just don't need it. Signed as well, but I think this is actually better than the one in the picture. It doesn't have really any loss. It's in really good shape. I think I'm going to put this up on ribbon candy hooking with the either Adopt Me stuff or whatever. But if you like this rug, let me know. I think I'm going to list it for $50. It's a really good rug. It's a nice old rug. It's in really good shape. The back is really good too. You can see there's hardly any color loss. But anyway, I just thought it was amazing. If you're looking at your bunnies, I thought it was amazing that I had the same rug because I wondered if it was a commercial pattern, and now I know it is. But I bought a lot of fairy tale rugs that I really don't need. This is one of them. But if you need it, you should get it because it's a beautiful rug. So anyway, I hope that you had fun on this trivia night. I certainly had. You got 22 right, Mom. That's not bad. 22 out of 40. That's over half. You did great. Thanks, Susan. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. It's always a long night. Let's go for 30 next time. 40 took me 2 days to get ready, and it just takes a long time. I'm losing my voice already. But it was so nice seeing everybody, and it's fun to play trivia. And I hope that you look up some of these websites that I found: Encompassing Designs, Melinda White, Honey Beehive, of course. Some of these sites that I pulled from. Really fun. Only 17 right. Jennifer, that's great. 17 right is great. These are super hard. These are super hard. So only 26, Janice, that's fantastic. That's really good. But I hope you had fun, and I hope you looked at some good rugs, and I hope you got some inspiration. And again, a lot of the antique rugs I put on ribboncandyhooking.com. So if you're interested in those, look out for those and look out tomorrow. I'm going to list a bunch of new things tomorrow on the website, announcing a bunch of things. Now that I'm over the crown and I am over the napping and I'm ready to work, I hope you all had fun. Thank you, Robin, Karen, Susan, Janice, Mom, Jennifer, everybody who's on. Thank you so much. I hope it was a fun night. Happy Friday. Enjoy your knowledge. You are all winners. That's for sure. In 2 weeks, we'll play bingo again for monies. Well, for credits, right? Doreen, I'm so glad that you had fun. Learn a few things as we go. But thanks, Christine. Another fun night. I will say happy weekend to all of you. Be well, take care. Listen, enjoy the end of winter. I know we complain about it. It's cold, it's hard, it's depressing. It's hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel, but the days are getting longer. And we are getting there. Just enjoy that image, Susan, of people skating out on the lake near you, that you could picture that. I mean, you have to enjoy where you are right now. Enjoy the weekend. Whatever you get, you get. You don't get upset. Enjoy it, because before you know it, in a snap, we're going to be in spring and we're going to be in summer, and it's all going to be over. Enjoy right now. Have a great weekend. I will see you on Monday. My intention on Monday is to do, I'm going to finish the Tamara Pavic creativity and design, and then probably Tuesday or Thursday I'm going to move to the Rug Money book and talk about Guatemalan rugs. So have a great weekend, and I will see you soon on Ribbon Candy Hooking Coffee Time. See you soon. Happy weekend.